If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to MINDSHOCK. This is Bruce McGuire.
Yeah.
And we are finally here launching our long-awaited NASA Moon Mission series. Were the Apollo mission hoaxed, real events, or a combination of both, where the footage was fake, but NASA really did put man on the moon? And we are not going to fall for any logical fallacies. This is a logical podcast examining all possible theoretical explanations with evidence for and against. As always, if you enjoyed the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. Make sure you allow your device to have those notifications come through. If you like this particular podcast, hit the like button, share it across social media platforms, of which you could find us on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for topic, case, or co-podcaster requests or logical analyses. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings, insults of any kind, leave them in the comments section. All right, JR, so the Mind Shockers have been clamoring for this episode for quite some time, and I know I had to have you on because of your connections to NASA, and you have a lot to say about NASA, both regarding the moon missions and about the organization as a whole, particularly the way they operate tax-wise. And yeah, but before we get into all that, we've been doing podcasts for a bit now. You still won't disclose any real personal information, which is fine. I don't think the audience expects you to if it's going to expose you too much. So, bottom line, do you believe NASA put man on the moon? Why or why not?
Well, that's something that we're going to have to discuss in the actual episode, Bruce. We're not going to, we're going to take this, slow and steady, because, there are various aspects in which I think that they proved certain particular things, and I think that there are other aspects where, well, let's just put it this way, I think it was bunko. So, it would depend on, how, but, we're going to go into explicit detail. I will say one thing right off the bat. I find it interesting that only one country that's existed for only about 300 years was the only country on Earth to put a man on the moon. I find that fascinating.
Interesting point, of course. Some people even believe that a lot of the Soviet space missions were also hoaxed or faked.
Well, I mean, again, you have to understand that, a lot of this took place, obviously, John F. Kennedy was assassinated, there are people that are for him, against him, whether it's Democrat or Republican. Obviously, in this period of time, there's a lot of political unrest regarding both parties, and then there are other parties, independent parties, green parties, white parties, red parties, racist parties. So, I think that, but this was done during the Reagan administration where, I think the primary goal, at least in the eyes of the government, was to outspend each other because we were in competition with the USSR.
All the listeners out there that don't know, JR is a government agent of an unspecified capacity. I don't believe you've ever actually cited your clearance level.
Yeah, no, I said I won't, out of protection for myself, and the fact that there are people out there.
You also never disclosed the exact agency you worked for, although you have been all over the world.
Yes, I have. I will say that I have been part of the United States military service, and as a result, as many military people are, they end up going into government service afterwards. I will say that I did work for a particular branch of the military, and, as a result, I followed, I guess, what you would consider, the others, and entered into the federal system after my tours of duty. However, those tours are not necessarily classified, they're not necessarily declassified. Some of them were classified, some of them were declassified. What people don't understand is the stupidest shit on earth can be considered classified. It's not all just like, like Navy SEALs and that's classified. Like, it doesn't work that way. Like, some of the stupidest shit that you could imagine, like, taking photographs in a dumpster, filled with diapers, to get like that perfect shot of that face can be considered classified. So, yeah, that's, I've worked on both ends of the beacon, but out of protection of my family and out of protection of the people that I worked with, who I highly respect and regard, I'm not going to disclose any information on
Just
social media.
regarding NASA and the moon missions, your information that you're going to be going over with us, is this pooled from any kind of direct involvement in programs that gave you direct knowledge of at least certain aspects of the moon missions? Or is this information coming from you speaking with people who have been involved with NASA or any other projects in that capacity?
Oh, I've been I've been to Cape Canaveral. I've worked directly with individuals that, I've worked with not only just general NASA technicians, like I've also worked with the arm division and, other aspects of that, so like I've dealt with people that are directly involved and are still involved with, because you called it, how did you pronounce it? Apollo? Or it was, how did you pronounce it?
Apollo.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, it depends on how you want to. Either the medieval Latin translation, the traditional Latin translation, the NASA American speak, or translating it into Greek. That denotes the pronunciation of the project itself. But that is one of many projects that we will cover because NASA has a lot of things in the works.
And here's something that I was always kind of curious about, because I've known a couple people who worked for NASA in the past as well, but they were all low level people that had nothing to do with anything. They didn't even discuss. I mean, what they have told me is that the moon missions or even space exploration wasn't even discussed in terms of their capacity. They were just low level computer people, and they just dealt with computer systems. They never, even the upper level people, they never really discussed any of the top projects. There was no, what I always find curious is, what is the sentiment around top level NASA officials? Is it, oh yeah, of course we went to the moon and we know because we have direct proof and knowledge that other people don't have? Or is it, how dare you question NASA? We've never seen any real proof, but how dare you question? Of course we went. Or is it even more sinister, like certain people in the flat Earth community report, where they kind of know it's all a sham and it's an inside joke? Did you pick up, what kind of sentiment did you pick up with in regards to higher level people within NASA?
Well, there's one thing you have to understand, and especially with the high level people, like there are things that NASA's done that are very good. I mean, like, for example, like I said in previous podcasts, a lot of government research comes from the financing of graduate projects through university. There is one thing that's solid that we can guarantee that NASA did do. They generated and created the idea of rope raw memory. Rope raw memory is the very basis of the platform that we're now using to discuss their system. So there is technology that, it exists purely because NASA was an agency. In terms of the actual interior political structure, I will say that NASA seems to have a certain pull with the government, which is very interesting. We have organizations such as DARPA and, other things where there's, intellectual research that's, produced, but there's not a lot of organizations that can go to Congress and say, we need $5 billion and we can't guarantee it's going to work, and they just hand it over.
Yes, I know.
So,
I know you have a lot to say regarding that aspect of NASA. Here's a couple things that I will say, of course, without falling for logical fallacies. People give NASA all this credit as if the technologies they developed are more important than feeding every starving child on Earth, than creating good living conditions for every human on Earth, for solving homelessness. Because if you just suspend NASA's budget for just a week or two, a month, you would have all these problems taken care of. And people don't seem to care. The other aspect of it is I know people point to the black and white fallacy of, well, NASA created this beneficial technology, therefore that justifies not only justifies their existence, it justifies the tens of millions of dollars given to them every single day, which could have been spent on easing human suffering on Earth or completely eliminating it. If you look at the entire span of NASA's existence, if not a single cent went to NASA and it all went to the benefit of humanity, what kind of world would we be living in? And to those people, I say this, and to you, how is it 100% certain that if NASA didn't exist, that these technologies would have not been developed? They would have been developed anyway because the same human.
Well, but and again, this has to be put into the episode, because this is a very broad question. The very first thing that I have to say is that NASA didn't necessarily develop all those technologies. As I said before, a lot of these projects were privately funded graduate study projects where we paid Joe Blow $10,000 to spend his entire fucking college career developing one, microchip, and then we use that, throw it into a computer board, and all of a sudden that computer board cost $20 billion. Okay? The second thing is the same thing to be said for a cascade of government agencies. Okay? It's not just NASA when you talk about, saving humanity. If we really analyze the government budget, because there are many bean counters out there, but, when you look at an actual federal budget, they talk about trillions of dollars like it's just, $20, breaking at 20. So, and it's not just NASA. So with that regard, that would have to be something that we would have to push into the primary podcast.
Yes, of course. And I was just addressing the people that make the argument that not only should NASA exist, but it should get the money it gets because of these handful of inventions that I guess they're pretending would not have been developed, possibly developed by the same people, simply working elsewhere, working under separate government grants. So let's get into the intro here.
Whoa. Wait, let me just touch one thing here. It's not necessarily the innovation. It's also the assembly of that innovation into a finalized ideal that someone can follow. How long did the cell phone exist before it actually became a viable product for the American people? How long did copper exist or bronze exist before it was understood that it could be sharpened into a weapon? There are it's not just necessarily the innovation of technology, it's the assembly of it into a product that is viable for the course of humanity at that particular given juncture.
Well, but my point still stands. It's not like another organization or other people couldn't have done it. It might have been even the same exact people to do it. They might have even done it cheaper if it was.
Well, now there are organizations that are trying to do it. SpaceX has existed for what? How many fucking years? And
Well, SpaceX is also government subsidized, but we're not going to get into SpaceX. For the purpose of this, we're going to be discussing, for this series, we're discussing the Apollo missions. Did NASA fake them and everything that entails in typical MindShock fashion with a complete comprehensive analysis. So, of course, the main points that we will go into with dedicated podcasts, but I'm going to go over them briefly now, just so the listeners can kind of understand the purpose of the series. I have been kind of disappointed with a lot of documentaries out there. I'm sure you've seen that first Fox documentary that started all of this. Basically, it's credited with giving a widespread audience to this particular conspiracy theory that the Apollo missions were faked. And I don't remember the year. Was it 2001, 2000?
It was around that year.
And the documentary, actually, looking back on it now, they picked some weaker arguments. There are some very, very strong arguments that they never went to the moon. They didn't even address the strong argument, which I thought was kind of strange. We're obviously going to get into that. We're going to get into that, but the main points I think that are debunked are not the main points that those who do not believe the moon missions happened as purported. It's almost like a straw man exercise of debunking. If you haven't checked out the MindShock podcast, Debunking Debunkers, I lay out in pretty simple terms the problems with a lot of these debunkings. Because if the conspiracy being alleged is that this government organization known as NASA faked these moon missions, why would you use government sources to debunk the conspiracy theory? And that's something coincidence theorists really, I don't know why they're that silly. It's not that hard to understand. If you're trying a serial killer in court, you're not going to use the evidence the serial killer brings from home. You're not going to trust that evidence to exculpate him, right? I mean, how silly is that? Why do you think coincidence theorists do that, where they use the government's own information to debunk a conspiracy being alleged against the government? It doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, I think a lot of it also has to do with political influence. I mean, again, we look at for example, the assembly of the Apollo, system. We can touch on the Ball Corporation. The Ball Corporation, they're known for making mason jars. The idea of canning your own vegetables is, or jarring your own peaches is, but that company actually works with NASA to build these particular products. Those people have their people, and those people eat dinner with those people. So it becomes a gray area very quickly.
Well, I'm talking about the average American citizen, Joe Schmo, sitting in his apartment watching TV and drinking beer, who has no connections to any of these individuals. Does he? I mean, I don't want to insult Joe Schmo, but because there's Joe Schmoes that are conspiracy theorists, aka critical thinkers, and there are Joe Schmoes that are coincidence theorists that kind of don't understand all these logical fallacies that they're falling for. Because I've actually never heard anybody make an argument that NASA landed on the moon without using logical fallacies to support that argument. And that's the whole reason for the existence of this series and even of the MindShock podcast in general. There's definitely a dearth of media that keeps in mind logical fallacies to present logically. Now, I'm not saying that man didn't go to the moon. And it's actually quite interesting because Alex Jones, of all people, do you know what he believes about the moon landing?
No, I stopped watching Alex Jones after he tried to started selling snake oil. So you would have to I have to remove myself from that particular comment, because to be quite honest, I think that just like Dr. Phil, where he gives some sort of make peace advice, and then his wife comes on and sells her wares. Like, I think that there's something to be said about people that the Mind Shock podcast is different in that we touch on elements without marketing any particular secondary product or entity. So that's why I'm a part of it. If we did, I'd instantly just disappear forever.
I think we need to release a JR line of supplements. All right. Anyway, so Alex Jones said that he believes that man landed on the moon, but all the footage was faked. And of course, it wouldn't have been broadcast live, because would they really take the chance? Like, let's say the astronauts died and that was broadcast live. What kind of an embarrassment to America would that be? Because you have the Russians watching, you have the Chinese watching, you have the whole world watching. If there was an accident on the surface of the moon and they died, would they take that chance? And common sense says no way. Not in the middle of the Cold War. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's funny because we talk about like we all have seen the footage, or at least I would hope that most people listening to this podcast have seen, Neil Armstrong walking off the steps saying, it's kind of like a powder. But not only did we supposedly land on the moon, we landed on the moon before Neil Armstrong. We just never left the capsule. Okay, after Neil Armstrong, we had vehicles driving around the moon. Okay, but again, I go back to the fact that there is only one flag that supposedly sits on the moon, and there's been no other nation that ever, and they have trillions of dollars at their disposal as well. So yeah, I mean, like again, I don't want to touch into. I want to discuss Hubble. I want to discuss the International Space Station. I want to discuss Russia trying to buy the International Space Station from America. I want to discuss a whole bunch of different things, but those are separate episodes.
There's a lot to discuss, but I don't know if you specifically answered the question. Do you believe that NASA and America would take the chance of broadcasting a live accident on a moon mission?
I don't believe they would, but you have to understand that, there's also what I find the denigration of honesty that has existed over the past several decades, and that, people used to be a lot more honest than they are today. Like, if you go on somebody's Facebook and you look at that Facebook, it's like they have this perfect life. They don't know that, like, he's actually in a wife beater beating the shit out of his wife, on the side. You just see the pictures of, like, the whole happy family smiling, for the camera. The same can be said about this particular project. Like, there probably were accidents. There probably were mistakes. There's all kinds of things.
And I don't want to be remiss to not mention the dozens and dozens. I think the death count is over 80 of NASA scientists that have supposedly accidentally died in car crashes or other means. Suicides, car crashes, all of that. A lot of people point to the fact that people die, but how come all these other scientific organizations don't have anywhere near the amount of people dying in this time span? Some people find that mysterious. I'm not sure what to think of it. I don't want to fall for black and white fallacies. Obviously, a certain percentage people die in car accidents. Obviously, some of them might have actually died in a real car accident. But for the sheer amount of high-ranking NASA scientists that die in short amount in this small span of time compared to other organizations, because this is what people fail to do. They fail to have controls in place because most people are into scientism. A lot of people view NASA itself as a church, and the priests of this church can do no wrong, and you have to trust, you have to take on faith everything they say. That's a problem for truly scientifically minded individuals who are not going to take it on faith that man went to the moon using footage that looks very fake, that has wires in it, that doesn't seem proportional to the gravity, the difference in gravity. And they've done simulations. You can find CGI footage of what it would look like to walk and jump on the moon at 1/6 gravity, and it does not look like what the moon footage looks like. Not to mention, you have, I mean, we'll get into the specific details in each episode, but you have things that don't even match the known laws of physics in that footage regarding the landers and all of those things, which again we'll go into in specifics. But if that footage looks relatively fake and people are supposed to take it on blind faith, that's problematic for scientific minded individuals. Would you agree or disagree with that?
Well, we have to do a separate podcast, Bruce, on this, because what this is actually entering into is what is referred to as the pack mentality. And there's different types of mentalities. There's A-type, mentalities. There's pack-minded mentalities, where you're either a true believer or you're not a true believer. It could be a cult, or it could be, a church, or it could be like, let me ask you a question. The mafia. There are people that blindly follow and join into an organized, what the government would refer to as a RICO-based organization. They do it blindly. They might have they might have starving babies. They might need money. They might need this. They might need that. But you've seen, and I'm sure that a lot of your podcast people have seen, movies where, there's that like crying guy in the interrogation room where he says you can't say no to these people. Now let me ask you a question. To an organization that can print its own money, has its own military, and has the ability to basically vaporize, based on nuclear war, what it wants at will. How do you say no to those people?
I don't know, but if you do say no, do you end up on the list of scientists that have mysteriously died?
Possibly. We'll have to discuss that in later podcasts.
Okay, the other point, which actually you actually went into it a little bit, the coincidence theorists who illogically claim that if the moon mission was faked, that Russia or other space agencies would have automatically blew the whistle. You actually already started going into my rebuttal to that. Again, doesn't mean they went or didn't go. They might have went, of course, but we're discussing the evidence and we're not going to do it on faith. We're going to do it using actual science and logic. So, if something threatens an institution, why would anybody blow the whistle on it? So, for example, like mafias. Now, mafias can be competing mafias, of course. So, if mafias are in a neighborhood, you got the Russian mafia, the American mafia, the Italian mafia, the triads, whatever. Obviously, they're competing with each other. They will do what's in their best interest. But if blowing the whistle on another mafia threatens their own existence and their own their own schemes, scams, and diabolical plots to exercise control and line their own pockets, of course they wouldn't do it. So I don't know why this is so difficult for people to understand. It's really simple, and this is one of the points that gets brought up as if it invalidates the moon landing being a hoax, which obviously it doesn't. If anything, it strengthens the argument, but it's actually part of the argument of the conspiracy. If the conspiracy is that big, and the flat earthers, obviously we have to spend a certain amount of time talking about the flat earthers because this is intertwined into their, I guess, belief system as well, where they believe all space agencies have the purpose of hoodwinking the masses into thinking that we're on a heliocentric globe and all of these space and planets, all these planets are actual terra firma that you can land on, as opposed to gases or other types of energy that aren't three-dimensional to the point you could actually land on it. Some people actually think the moon is not a three-dimensional physical object. It's some kind of energy. So it's actually impossible to land on it. What do you say about that?
Well, what you asked was multiple part. In terms of the actual composition of the moon, we're gonna have to touch on that on episode one. But in terms of it's interesting. You spoke about, wouldn't they blow the whistle? Well, I find it very interesting that when we talk about the International Space Station, we have not only Americans but Russians in the same space station, in the same space capsule. So obviously an arrangement was met. It was, so this is the type of thing where we start seeing one guy backed up next to another guy with money in a hand, holding out behind his back to grab from another hand. So this is something that has to be examined very closely, probably in its own dedicated episode.
Yeah, and we will do that. I just wanted to touch on that because that's one of the silliest arguments that coincidence theorists make regarding moon landing not being a hoax and using that as evidence. It's the same thing with let's say the Catholic Church. You could have a church in multiple countries And even if the church is doing something bad, they're not necessarily going to blow the whistle on each other if it threatens the organization as a whole. And the other thing coincidence theorists use is the appeal to incredulity logical fallacy, where they don't believe there would be a reason good enough to fake it. Therefore, they're just going to religiously and dogmatically buy into the scientism because their feeble and ignorant mind doesn't know the reason. Well, again, that actually proves the point of the conspiracy theorists, aka critical thinkers, because the reason would obviously have to be a good reason and it would have to be classified so they wouldn't know about it. So the fact that they don't know about it could be used as evidence that if the conspiracy is true, obviously there would have to be a reason good enough to facilitate it. Is this all just basic common sense to you, or is it strange that we actually have to go through these aspects? Because a lot of the coincidence theorists, these are their arguments against a moon landing hoax, which are of course fallacious.
Well, it's not, it's not cut and dry because, I mean, you have to look at it from this perspective. And then, like, we'll use a perspective that existed before modern day technology. Okay, let's look at the Roman Catholic Church. The Roman Catholic Church was extremely powerful. And at some point, England decided, hey, you know what? We're not going to listen to the Catholic Church anymore. We're going to create our own church. Well, it's interesting how they didn't vaporize each other. They coexisted. So we're not dealing with something that's just purely based on logic, math, science, and reason. There's also the aspect of the human mind, which is emotion. And that's something that has to be thrown into the mix. And for several different reasons, it's very difficult because human emotion varies from individual to individual. There are sociopaths. There are people that are, like they've devoted their lives to saving others. There's a whole scope. So what you're talking about is a calliope of gray areas that have to be put into perspective, piece by piece, unit by unit, which is why it's a series and it's not just an episode.
Yep. And the other thing that really jumps out to me that the coincidence theorists have no answer for is the tens of thousands of telemetry reels that were just lost. Now, if someone claims to have executed the greatest feat and the greatest accomplishment in the history of mankind, and you ask for proof and they say, my dog ate my homework, what is the response of any logical individual going to be?
You would have to ask Jesus Christ, because I believe that out of all the people on earth, he probably did just what you just said. And there have been wars that have been fought and lost and won.
Yeah, but that's
and there have been kingdoms that have been built and destroyed based on just what you said.
We weren't around back then, and that's a completely different time period. So to the people that witnessed, are you referring to him rising from the dead? Or are you which aspect?
I'm referring to just the basic logic of the fact that not only was he able to supposedly perform miracles, but not only was he executed, but it's been proven that he was a real human being. I'm saying that as a real human being, whether or not you believe in his doctrine or whatever, if you're an atheist or you're agnostic.
That happened so long ago, and we have so much broken telephone translations of all of those. Like that's I don't believe that's a congruent argument, because the people that were there, if they witnessed him doing what is purported, then they have that direct proof. They didn't need to rely on other proof.
And well, they some people would argue that they do. They call it the Holy Bible.
Right. No, I'm talking about the people at the time. Like if Jesus performed the miracle on you and you were healed, you don't need proof. That is your proof. So you have your direct proof. So, and because it happened so long ago, like I'm talking about in modern times. Like if you say you went to Pluto yesterday and I ask you, where's your evidence? And you say, my dog ate my homework. What is my response going to be? That because in a modern era where the telemetry reels did exist and were recorded supposedly, And what did they record? They basically just didn't back them up. I mean, I don't know if I even believe that story. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean they didn't go to the moon. Do you think NASA really does have the telemetry reels and they just don't want anybody looking at it for a particular reason? So they said that they don't have them?
I believe certain things about NASA. I believe that they have the video footage of when Columbia actually exploded, and they don't show it, probably to protect the family and the people that were actually a part of that mission. I believe that they have a lot of things that they're never going to disclose, because I think that they have their own reasons. Because again, we're not dealing with an entity, we are dealing with human beings. And those human beings have, again, we enter into the question of the gray area of emotions. There are things in this world, for example, the assassination of JFK. There is evidence that is classified, that, justifies certain things. Will it ever reach the surface? No, because you, as in a person, as a human being, not only do you have to have access to that information, but you have to have the knockers to push the button so the rest of the world knows that that information exists.
You didn't directly answer the question, JR. So you're saying they might have, it's a possibility they have the telemetry data. They just lied and said they didn't because they don't want other people looking at it for whatever reason, a reason we don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that's a possibility as well. But I think, and we're going to round out this intro because this was just laying the groundwork and saying everything we're going to go over. We're definitely going to go over the pressurized suit issues, the measurement issues, all of the inconsistencies, whether the Van Allen belt really exists or not, if the radiation would preclude any transfer of film. And of course,
that whole thing during the Mercury project.
Yeah, and the whole what nobody really wants to talk about, which is one of the smoking guns in my opinion, is that there was a documentary roughly 2 weeks before the first mission where the head engineer, who I believe was killed, he said that there were no known metals or materials that could withstand the heat or the cosmic radiation. They didn't exist. And if you look at the material list of everything used in the Apollo missions, and you look at the melting points and all of these things, they don't add up and it's not even close. So how did they go? Well, the counterpoint, of course, is that NASA could theoretically have top secret materials that are not public, so they could never disclose what they used in order. So there's a lot of, I don't want to fall for black and white fallacies, of course.
Well, no, I mean, but again, like the same thing could be said. I mean, like, let's just pull out a corporation. There's a corporation known as Firestone. Okay, they make tires. According to records that are, classified, they have a tire, a material to build rubber for tires that will never wear. And when they came up with that formula, it was shelved because obviously if they created tires that would never wear, then they would never sell another tire.
Yeah.
So there are, yes, we will go heavily into this, but I think we should wrap up this introduction.
Yeah, I was just going over the quick overview. There's problems there. There's problems with could the film have even survived the trip. There's a multitude of issues that we will be going into. I just wanted to lay the groundwork there. But yeah, I think the crux of the issue for most people when discussing this topic is, of course, logical incomprehension. Because you can't use logical fallacies to support a position and call it logical. That's the opposite of logical if you're relying on information or arguments that are logically fallacious. Now, that doesn't mean your conclusion is false. If man went to the moon, they went to the moon. If they didn't go, they didn't go. But MindShock is all about logical examinations. And the burden of proof is on the one making the claim. This is something the coincidence theorists that cling desperately to their scientism dogma that NASA would never lie, or governments would never lie, or corrupt people are not corrupt. They cling to this dogma not realizing the burden of proof is on them or on whoever is claiming man went to the moon. Man went to the moon. That's an extraordinary claim. And extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, do they not, JR?
Yes, they do.
And we will be examining whether the evidence is there or not, or whether this is just a series of my dog ate my homework excuses. And just the last point I wanted to make regarding Moore's Law and the exponential development of technology, do you find it strange that if man really went to the moon, they kept planning to go again? Because if you go through the news, you can go through news clippings. The original return to the moon, if it wasn't the late 80s, it was definitely the 90s. It was early, then mid, then late 90s. Because when I was a kid in school, I do remember the announcements that NASA's going to the moon again every couple years. Every couple years. And then that continued even through the 2000s. And you can go through Google Archive and you can find all of these news releases that they were going back in 2000, then 2005, then 2010, then 2015, then 2018, then 20.
Oh, well, by 2015, we were going to Mars. So.
Allegedly. And that's a topic for a different podcast. But just in general, the news reports of the supposed return to the moon that were planned and never happened. Because during the original Apollo missions, what was the claim? That this technology had less memory than a washing machine? And now today, with all of this exponential increase in technology, they can't go back to the moon?
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore.
It's kind of bizarre. It's just kind of bizarre. And then furthermore, they can't point any super high power telescope to the surface of the moon to verify that the landers are there or whatever. It's all very bizarre to people.
Well, they do claim that there's a laser that if you point it at a particular bracket, it'll actually bounce back. But yeah, no.
And now that you brought that up, I will give the counterclaim to that. What is that laser bouncing off of? And we're going to have to dedicate a whole episode to that because that's a really interesting topic. And I saw this long presentation by an astrophysicist on how that laser works. And let me just tease this. It does not align with the scientific method, and that's all I'm going to say about that. And we will obviously go into that probably for its own dedicated episode. But just regarding the technological aspect, what happened to the tourism that was supposed to happen to the moon? Not just, by private companies, like SpaceX was supposed to have rolled this out in 2008 or something originally, or 2011? When the space tourism was supposed to start to the moon, and that never happened. I mean, why do the coincidence theorists always ignore all of these stories that never happened if the technology is that legitimate?
Again, we'll discuss this, in length.
All right, there you go. That is what JR is willing to say for the moment. So join us next time where we will be doing point-by-point examinations of every aspect of the Apollo missions, and we are going to be talking about things that have not been talked about. Some really, really damning information, some damning evidence against the Apollo missions that have not been discussed on your typical conspiracy documentaries and podcasts. In typical MindShock fashion, comprehensive and not logically fallacious. We hope you guys enjoyed another edition of the MindShock podcast. If you like the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. If you like this podcast, hit the like button, share it across social media platforms. Questions, comments, thoughts, theories, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings, leave them in the comments section. You can check us out on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case or topic requests. If you have any specific questions as a patron, you will get them answered as top priority. This is Bruce McGuire signing off.
And JR tapping out.
We'll catch you guys next time.
If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to MINDSHOCK. This is your host, Bruce McGuire, and you are listening to NASA's Apollo Missions series. Whether or not NASA hoaxed the moon landings. And if you haven't checked out episode 1, make sure you check that out. This is episode 2, The Smoking Gun. Or possibly The Smoking Guns. We're going to go over not one, but 2 pieces of critical information that might be the end of this debate once and for all. And bold claims, but this is MINDSHOCK, where the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure, but we're not even sure about that. As always, if you find the podcast interesting and informative, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. You could also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube for access to exclusive streams and chats. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notifications. Make sure you allow your device to have those notifications come through. Like and share the podcast, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, and Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic, logical analysis, podcast requests. You could also be a guest on the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, theories, not suggestions, rebuttal, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. And trigger warning for the authority-worshipping cultists and the coincidence theorists. At least understand what is being discussed here before jumping in a triggered and Dunning-Kruger stupor to make a comment for the sake of making a comment. Because if all you have is faith and fallacy and an incomprehension of what's being presented, that's not going to be conducive to any kind of actual legitimate dialogue. However, for educational purposes, feel free to do that, because Dunning-Kruger stylings are, of course, endlessly hilarious, and this is a logical podcast, so pointing out faith and fallacy as types of arguments and the invalidity of such is, of course, one of the staples of the podcast here. I have addressed the moon landing several times. Now, this is kind of logic 101, but something the coincidence theorists, the authority-worshipping cultists, those that worship at the altar of scientism instead of science, where they put blind faith in corrupt authorities with horrible track records, aka government agencies, they fail to understand that the burden of proof is on positive claims, and extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. One is not called upon to prove a negative. So if you say you went to Mars yesterday, it's not up to everyone to disprove it. It's up to you to prove it. And then if you say your dog ate your homework, the excuse they lost 18,000 reels of telemetry data, that would at least provide some kind of evidence, just saying they lost it, supposedly the greatest achievement in the history of mankind. That all these moon rocks given to different governments and museums, they're just petrified wood from Arizona. I mean, these are not legitimate, these are not extraordinary pieces of evidence to back up these extraordinary claims. But the authority-worshipping cultists, the coincidence theorists, they just fail to understand. They have a fundamental lack of understanding about how logic works, about how the scientific method works, about how burden of proof works. And all these clueless goofs will just blindly defend the moon landing with religious fervor without actually having a legitimate logical dialogue in terms of what evidence can be used to hold up the theory that NASA went to the moon and what evidence cannot. Now, for the purpose of this podcast, even though one is not called upon to prove a negative, that doesn't mean one can't prove a negative. For example, someone claiming to go to Mars yesterday, if there's security footage at different stages of the day from different areas with many different witnesses and GPS cell phone data, I mean, there's a lot of traffic cameras, etc. There's a lot of pieces of information that can disprove a particular individual went to Mars. Not that it has to be done, because nobody should take that on blind faith alone. So are we going to disprove the moon landings once and for all in this podcast right now? The MINDSHOCK listeners are waiting with bated breath, and I will attempt not to disappoint them. So we might have not one, but 2 smoking guns that we're going to go over. Now, there's a mountain of evidence against the moon landing, just countless anomalies, clearly faked footage with wires. Now, that doesn't mean that NASA didn't go to the moon. That just means the footage is faked. So that's something that the more hardcore conspiracy theorists, those that understand how human fallibility, human corruption works, some of them, the fringe minority, that claim to know things for sure. Here on MindShock, we don't claim anything is true or untrue, because again, we're not going to hallucinate that we know the truth with limited information. I mean, nobody who doesn't have access to the highest levels of clearance in government would be able to know for sure if they did go. Now, that doesn't mean we can't logically examine and possibly have smoking guns that they didn't go, or at least the footage is all faked. So, let's start with this interesting post just a few months ago by Aleti on the conspiracy subreddit, which is a cesspool. I mean, there's plenty of critical thinking conspiracy theorists. There's plenty of clueless goof coincidence theorists. There's everything and anything in between. But occasionally there are some solid posts. This is one of them that brings to light a certain method of technology that can be used to ascertain whether certain images are faked, or at least cast doubt on the validity of images. So this post is quite interesting here. I owe the moon landing conspiracy theorists an apology. I always believed the theories to be crazy. But why? I had never really looked into it. Again, that's called cognitive dissonance. Because when people are hopelessly indoctrinated into the cult of state and authority worship and scientism, they just believe whatever the mainstream authorities say on the idiot box. They don't question. They're not scientifically skeptical. They just believe it on religious blind faith in corrupt authorities with horrible track records of failure and lying. But continuing here, there are some actual crazy theories out there. I have been a bit more open-minded the past 10 years, and so when this rolled out for a chance to disprove the conspiracy theory once and for all using a method of EMF extraction, I found myself proving the conspiracy theorists correct. And that's interesting too. Like, what's the track record of conspiracy theorists who are scientifically skeptical of these corrupt authorities with horrible track records, everything from MK Ultra to Skiji, Gulf of Tonkin. I mean, it's just the poisoning of St. Louis. I mean, geoengineering, aka chemtrails, all this stuff. I mean, what's the scoreboard here versus conspiracy theorists and coincidence theorists? I mean, are the coincidence theorists even accidentally correct about anything yet? Okay, so this EMF extraction method is labeled by Andrew Letty as a novel method, uncovers the color spectrum of light from white images, and reveals black holes. This was published on Medium.com by Andrew Letty, March 12th. Which means we can finally put an end to this debate. Did we go to the moon? Images of lighting, the moon, EMF frequencies, black holes, and the galaxy. When I was trying to figure out a method to measure the distance light travels between obstructions through atmospheric fog, I found a method which allowed for the extraction of light through seemingly white images. And then I accidentally found a really fast and easy way to extract black holes from an image without needing thousands of gigabytes of data. The process takes maybe 30 seconds. While the spectrum of light above is from one process, the multiple colors of the craters of the moon are from 4 processes. I had used this technique for months and have studied thousands of photos. Well, actually, I've studied videos as well, so hundreds of thousands of photos. I should have said I studied thousands of environments. So here we can see 2 channels of colors, one positive, one negative. You'll notice one is CYMK, the other is RGB. The sun has never ever failed to recreate the exact same pattern with the exact same distance of color, nor change the color. Before we get to the moon, I would like you to become a bit more familiar with what the raw processed images look like. No adjustments are ever made between these images. They all go through the exact same process. Here we have raw data, the original image, and the fully processed image. I like how nice the processed image looks, but tend to hide much of the information I need to determine the environment. I'll show you a few. You'll notice that anything with natural light will give off the same exact order of CMYK, cyan, yellow, magenta, and, well, key. The moon tends to look perfectly normal, as the above would show in every image, unless someone edits the hell out of it. It becomes very easy to spot a real star, natural light, and fake environments. There is one fake environment below and the 3 pictures of a real star. It should be fairly obvious which images the star belongs to. The fake image has 2 fake stars. Both are stars, the latter is a reflection of the sun. Transformative data representations of electromagnetic frequency. The image with bright red, bright green, and bright yellow is the imposter image. Those waves appear to prove part of my framework. Essentially, the Earth is dual negative monopole. The interference of electromagnetic waves tend to produce red streaks. The Hubble telescope recently took a neat photo of a triangle cluster. I believe it was from the angle and exposure. Even at great distances, the colors of light prove true. The following images are either inside with human-made lights or along these lines. And you can see huge difference here. Green, yellow, blue always like to appear together as well as scattered across the entire environment when a human-made light is around, with the exception of... Interesting. Wow. Very, very interesting. The difference of different light. Black, yellow, blue, green all like to hang around human-made machines. This is a mix of human-made light and natural light. Note, the dark trim is not the same as the ones prior. I mean, even just on a basic level, the natural light is just a lot more pleasant than the crazy, sporadic, sharp spectrum of colors in artificial lights. So here's the Earth, Mars surface, Mars satellite view. I am now going to prep you for some different situations, and you should not need any reference photos of these. They are clear as to what they are. The first image, however, I will reference because this is what a fake beam of light looks like. And an alleged nuclear explosion here. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole for the purpose of this podcast, but... because that could be any kind of an explosion with any kind of radiation. Not necessarily nuclear, but... Okay, plasma via lightning does not change the order of light and stays consistent. Lightning is very interesting. It puts all of the energy down, but always spouts a large burst of energy out of the side. From a bright white spot manifests a black hole. I am pretty sure this is a black hole. It is the galactic center of the Andromeda Galaxy. I reprocessed and reworked it to extract and divide, and came out the black hole. This was kind of on accident. I did not expect it to work, since they had to use GB of photos and then they had to slowly expose the photos to reveal a black hole. This method took less than 30 seconds, and dare I say it, is at higher quality. A couple more images here. Some of them look really crazy. Huh. This method has been trustworthy from inside to outside, around the Earth, in the International Space Station, and other galaxies. In the ocean, in the dark of night, to phenomena not normally present, such as nuclear explosions or nuclear meltdown, to theaters and movie sets. One moment of truth. I processed the first image of the moon landing, and my belief interference activated instantly right on cue. I was not exposed as long as most to the cause of this defect, but it still appears. I have to be as self-aware as much as possible to keep my bias down to 0. If I automatically reject a very possible alternative, then I have failed as a human, a researcher, and no longer will I be able to contribute to society. Those who do not ask questions where questions are warranted are useless to progress. Those who ask questions to stop progress because they do not want change are just as useless. I have studied human behavior all of my life, and the one thing I am certain about is that cognitive dissonance is not the issue. It is a belief interference for the need to be right because of years of negative reinforcement training from public school. I luckily did very difficult puzzles and cognitive exercises until 7th grade. It was by accident. I just enjoyed those activities. Our education system teaches you that if anyone says anything different, then they are wrong and they will fail. It gets worse the longer you stay in secondary education. The 3 signs, MAD, mock, angry, delusion. The last part will cause your ability to read to cease. It will cause you to shut down and ignore all conflicting information. The only way to go beyond this defect is to suffer through the massive headaches as your brain rearranges the structure of information which is stored within your brain. The older the belief or idea, the bigger the headache. The moon landing was something I held to be absolute truth my entire life. Laughing causes you to relieve the instant pain which hits you in the head as your memories start to associate and rearrange differently. Everything within your brain is connected to seemingly random events, names, people, words, smells, etc. And so to change a core belief would mean you must rearrange accordingly so that all connections know to point to the new belief. Pair this with a negative reinforcement and you will do everything in your power to shut down. I fell asleep for 2 days after experiencing the worst headache of my life after processing all of the images. When I woke up, I ignored it for an hour. I cannot ignore something like this. I found it simple to reevaluate now that I had taken the time needed to accept the fact that we may have never landed on the moon. Well, here's another thing, so you can tell this guy, he's pretty thoroughly indoctrinated. This associative collective narcissism and collective hubris of a species. Even if humans landed on the moon, it's not we, it's those humans. They landed, if they did. But anyway, I did a whole podcast on the we arguments on MINDSHOCK, so make sure you check that out. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a movie director and I was obsessed with 3D animation and stop motion. I grew up playing with physics engines and so I do not need mathematics to understand how an event will occur. I, however, love mathematics and so it is easy for me to imagine and then manifest in the form of an equation. I am a very modest liberal. Did you not think I would eventually fact check you? Short rant for those without open minds. If you are already closed-minded enough to think the American government would not lie to you, perhaps you should check yourself. Do not bother to read this. I am not trying to convince you. I am not actually giving a verdict on this. This is something I hate to believe, but I have to evaluate it unbiased or else I become absolutely useless. Copy and paste are good for quick regurgitations, but it is useless. I have my opinion on it. I will give you the information I saw, and that will be the last I speak about it. And I mean this wholeheartedly, don't really care if they did or did not land on the moon. Do you know how hard it would be to actually land on the moon and then relaunch and travel 230,000 miles back to Earth? They absolutely went to space. That is about as much as I will credit them with. Some people don't believe they went to space either, or at least not outer space. Obviously people have been up, pretty high up. Definitely they've been there. There's plenty of evidence of that. First, I went into this trying to disprove crazy conspiracy theorists. I, however, am not delusional enough to be one-sided. I do not stop at the first question like most do. I dig about 3 questions deep per instance. Once it branches out between 2 variables, each branch is evaluated. Do you really think I would release if I was not positive about it? Yes, I found a way to detect black holes very easily. Oh, and just for the hell of it, the moon landing never happened. Worst strategy ever. I had never once actually evaluated nor questioned the moon footage. Why? Because I did not want it to be untrue. This guy does seem kind of honest about his biases there. His mental strength is clearly greater than most authority-worshipping cultists with blind faith in the Church of NASA or these other institutions that they treat as churches and all their information as gospel. While I gave myself time to reevaluate this from scratch a 3rd time, days apart, I noticed every discrepancy all within 20 minutes of viewing the photos and archival footage from NASA. I have only heard blips of what conspiracy theorists have said on pop culture television. I had, and still have, zero desire to read the straws at which they grasp for. I only know of one refutation, and that is the direction of light. It's actually kind of funny because it's the coincidence theorists that grasp at straws to try to explain away all the anomalies where, the conspiracy theorists are just being scientifically skeptical and pointing out anomalies and problems like Swiss cheese in the moon landing narrative. The thought process for each evaluation. All right, I know you're waiting for kidding, but I do not do that. It may help you understand much better if you are on a desktop computer. Before we go into the forensics of light for this event, I am going to walk you through my initial reactions. I really do not know why I wanted this to be factual. I never had any interest in it. I have never seen the video or looked upon the photos. Again, it's just kind of like a safety blanket for coincidence theorists. To think that they've been hoodwinked this severely and this obviously. It's weird. Some of these conspiracies, the more obvious the conspiracy, the more all of these clueless coincidence theorists dig their head in the sand and pretend it's not obvious that it's a conspiracy or cover-up. It's really weird. It's like the more obvious it is, the more their ego is triggered that they were hoodwinked because it's so obvious. If it was hidden extremely well, maybe the cognitive dissonance and the triggering wouldn't be as severe because the ego might not be as damaged if it was like a really good, smart cover-up. First thoughts, there are no stars. Why does the flag have a wire mesh within it? Perhaps it was to ensure a prominent display. How are two adjacent diagonal light beams possible? The EMF extraction shows one beam left pink and another one right white. The boot prints are too large for that suit. That is not a person, that is a very well-made toy-like figure. I mean, I don't know how he determines that. I mean, the boot prints are definitely off. Huh. There's a lot of problems with this footage. If a wire mesh exists in the fabric, then there's a great possibility that the moon landing was stop motion. The foil on the craft is far too perfect to have gone through a launch as well as a distance of 232,000 miles. The foil, as they apply it to crafts, is usually very wrinkled already. There is now zero possible way for this to be standard size foil. The photo is at least a miniature. The landing... I mean, the lighting conditions, too. I mean, again, let's put everything aside and just the quick eye test. I mean, the lighting just looks like a lighting on a movie set. It doesn't even look like outdoor lighting. Like, compare this landing to, again, just, let's say, whether a movie or a home video shot outdoors. That's just not a natural lighting setup. I mean, it's such even light across all sides. I mean, just the basic eye test. Something was scrubbed out of the first image, it is very clear. Who the hell took the picture of the lunar landing? This is a genuine photo of a life-size replica. The foil on this image is wrinkled to the size that it should be. And that's interesting. I don't know if I've ever even looked at the foil wrinkles, because there is a problem with the previous photo we looked at. And then this photo has much more, the wrinkles do look much more accurate as normal foil wrinkles. The bronzed foil is blurred out, but it is clear enough to see the many creases that it should have. Next picture here. It is odd for a camera of high quality to not have motion blur, yet be unable to pick up any trace of a star. I wonder if the video had any stars. Yep. There are a lot of videos for this, but I went and dug for the most unedited version and also sourced multiple versions. This video luckily had both of the new and the old together. The greatest proof of all. And this guy didn't even go into the just the frame rates. On the previous episode, I went over the frame rates. I went over the actual footage in terms of simulations regarding gravity, etc., because they would be able to jump, obviously, a lot higher. As they did in NASA's own simulations of what it would be like to walk on the moon mathematically. Those actually looked relatively realistic in terms of movement. But what we have here, again, just changed the frame rate, and all of a sudden you can see that it was clearly shot on Earth. With the dust settling and all that. The greatest proof of all is the easiest and most damning of the proofs to prove. When you realize you do not even need my EMF extractions to disprove the moon landing. Everything is within the video and the images of the flag. The flag is frozen in every image, but look at the claymation animation style it adapts in the official video from NASA. But it bothered me. The frames between each crisp frame were artificially blended to give the illusion of additional frames. A trick used in cartoons and stop motion. I took away tweened frames and slowed it down by half. You will notice 3 things. The flag is animated very well to act like it is in zero gravity, meaning the wire mesh was not there for prominent display. 2, the cord being pulled by the other astronaut is stiff like wire. Even in zero gravity, a coaxed cord would not act like that. 3, why did the restoration degrade it further? I mean, yeah, it's a lot softer and blurrier than the original. It's kind of weird. Oh, that's what they meant about shadows going in 2 directions? Yikes. Why the hell were people calling someone crazy for noticing that? The crazy ones are not conspiracy theorists. The crazy ones are those who are so blind that they delude themselves into thinking something is not there. And that's, of course, a staple of coincidence theorists. I do not have to do any forensics to know that we never landed on the moon. Why is the other angle never shown? Why is that rock always in the background? Also, those helmets were designed to reflect infrared, gamma rays, X-rays, and any frequency of color that is deadly. Yet in the photo a few above, there is no reflection. In transit, firmly standing on ground, tag hanging down as if gravity was applied to it, which is weird. Did they not go to space at all? I am beginning to have my doubts. This is where the lunar landed, yet none of that environment is ever shown on foot. There are also 3 straight lines stabilizing this thing. But the disturbing part of that is the fact that someone tried to hide it under the imperfections of the moon. Because I was about to actually just say that could be some kind of artifacting over the top, but yeah, it is weird. It kind of blends through the moon. That's strange. Why can't you see the flag on the moon? The official response, it fell over. If you are part of this species, do not question everything that exists. Question that which has no answer. And stop listening to other humans. Most of them are clearly too influenced. If I sound overconfident, that is because I did the forensics multiple times prior to writing this. I know how this already ends. You see that receiver transmitter? It's facing the wrong way. This was the moon phase, July 20th, 1969. The moon's orbit viewed from above. Huh. What's he trying to say here? Oh, relative to where they landed, if they're transmitting back to Earth, it's facing the wrong way. That's funny. That's funny. All right, I could talk for hours on the bad production value. All right, so Earth looks normal, the launch normal. The moon from afar and zoomed in, normal as we would expect from the above. Inside the ISS, normal. There is nothing consistent about the moon. The only consistency was that of 2001: A Space Odyssey. I am a big fan of HAL. It is exactly what humans would do. It is what they are doing. My favorite lyric is from an epic rap battle because nothing could be closer to the truth. I'm in your lap and in your pocket. How are you going to shoot me down when I guide the rocket? One final look at some non-staged photos. And a quick look at a movie from Complete Random. Well, there was only one movie to choose from. I did not lie. Okay. Now that we have all that data locked into our heads, let's look at the spectrum of light within the moon photos. What are the chances that it matches up with a movie set? I even gave it the benefit of the doubt, and I cheated in favor of the moon landing being authentic. I gave each image 4 notches in both directions for 8 separate analysis profiles. Here's what the moon looks like when you color burn all 8 layers. Here is what it looks like when I use various techniques which allow for 3D wave location, black hole extractor, and a new one which is right below this. I do not have a use for it, it is just pretty. It mattered 0% of the time. The green hue is present on most of these. Green is a prime indicator of studio lighting when on the base channel. Natural light on the moon above did not change at all. The only change was the distance between waves. Remember this photo. This was the first photo I processed. Remember this green glow. It actually appeared on most of the images, but there are already too many photos. Instead, I will share the weird ones across the spectrum. Even if you cannot see the stars, there should still be indicators that they exist. These images do no such thing. And I find it really troubling because the shadows do really weird and backwards actions. Look at the shadow of the astronaut above. Yeah, that is kind of weird. Huh. Multiple light sources. Here's what's weird, though. Let me just interject here for a moment. I mean, whether Kubrick directed the moon landing or not, I mean, that's going to be a separate episode in and of itself because the Kubrick anomalies are just, I mean, the coincidence stack on that one, wow. But let's put that aside. Regardless, how hard would it have been to just have some tiny little lights in the studio ceiling or in the background, or at least some kind of fake wallpaper background with stars? I mean, was that just an oversight? I mean, it's kind of weird. I mean, obviously they didn't think some guy would be doing EMF color spectrum extraction and analyzing it to this depth. I mean, I think that was one of the greatest failures. They didn't foresee the consumer high def tech, or maybe they did and didn't care. Maybe that's part of the agenda, is that's supposed to be leaked. I mean, who knows? But obviously on those grainy, crappy TVs way back when, before VCRs, it was just, I mean, I guess they just didn't anticipate it, because it is hard to tell that it's fake just on that, with an old, crappy TV set from the 60s. The yellow and blue shows up a lot in theater lighting. None of the images are consistent. I mean, that's another good point, too, because whether it's real or fake, like let's say there's some kind of electromagnetic interference on the moon. Obviously, I mean, it wouldn't look like studio lighting, it would look like something else, but at least it would be regardless of what it looks like, it should be consistent throughout, because they're in a singular location. So the sun is, at the time they're taking all these photographs and videos, the sun's where it is, the earth's where it is, the stars are where they are. It should be consistent, but it's not. That's kind of weird too. It gets better, though. Here are the only images that were consistent. Photo of the launch, the rocket, the Earth, their rescue, and Congress. The TV within NASA gave off the correct spectrum of light because it is not using the light from the environment, it is using the light from the screen. Interesting. Whoa, that's very interesting. Because it's a photo of a photo, or a video or photo of another photo, because they had a projector set up. The most damning of all, the origin of light. Check out where the waves are originating from. Wow. You can easily see the square from an old image they used to blend in the Earth. This is a famous one, actually. It's been discussed quite a bit, where they just copy-paste the Earth into images. No, actually, this is the most damning evidence. The original uncut video of the moon landing. In most spots of the video, the responder from Houston waits approximately 3 to 4 seconds to respond.
Okay, would you verify the position, the opening I ought to have on the camera? Stand by. Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now. Neil, we can see you coming. Okay, I just checked, getting back up to that first step. That isn't collapsed too far, but it's adequate to get back up. Roger, we copy. It's a pretty good little jump. Buzz, this is Houston. F2, 1/160th second for shadow photography on the sequence camera. Okay. At the foot of the ladder, the limb footbeds are only depressed in the surface about 1 or 2 inches, although the surface appears to be very, very fine grained as you get close to it. It's almost like a powder. Ground mass is very fine. I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Um, there seems to be no difficulty in moving around as we suspected. It's even perhaps easier than the simulations of 16G that we performed in various simulations on the ground. Absolutely no trouble to walk around. Okay, the descent engine did not leave a crater of any size. It has about 1 foot clearance on the ground. We're essentially on a very level place here. I can see some evidence of rays emanating from the descent engine, but very insignificant amount. Okay, Buzz, we ready to bring down the camera? I'm all ready. I think it's 2 miles squared away in good shape. Okay. Okay, you'll have to pay out all the LEC. It looks like it's coming out nice and evenly. Okay, it's quite dark here in the shadow and a little hard for me to see that I have good footing. I'll work my way over into the sunlight here without looking directly into the sun. Okay, it's taut now. Unofficial time on the first step, 109.2420. Okay, I think it's pulling the wrong one. I'm ready to pull it down now. There was still a little bit left in the... Okay, don't hold it quite so tight. Okay? Okay. up at the limb, I'm standing directly in the shadow now, looking up at Buzz in the windows. And I can see everything quite clearly. The light is sufficiently bright, backlighted into the front of the limb, that everything is very clearly visible. Okay, I'm going to be changing the okay.
The surgeon says that
Camera installed on the ICU bracket.
the surgeon says the crew is doing well. Data is good. Crew is doing well.
And I'm still in the LEC on the secondary strut. I'll step out and take some of my first pictures here. Roger, Neil, we're reading you loud and clear. Let's see, getting some pictures and the contingency sample.
35.5 minutes of PLSS time expended now. Neil, this is Houston. Did you copy about the contingency sample? Over. All right, you're going to get to that just as soon as I finish these picture series.
236,752 miles divided by 186,282 miles per second equals 1,270 milliseconds times 2 equals 2,540 milliseconds for communications round trip. In 2 of the areas in the original video, he responds within 395 milliseconds and 460 milliseconds. The official curator of video archives stated, sometimes to cut down on times of dead air, the gaps are shortened. Bull expletive. There is a lot of dead air in the video, And if they edited 2, why not all of them inconsistent? They would not have the audacity to publicly display it, though, I am sure.
Let me move that over the edge for you. Okay, you ready for me to come out? Yeah, just stand by a second. I'll move this over the handrail. Okay? All right, that's got it. Are you ready? All set. Okay, you saw what difficulties I was having. I'll try to watch your bliss from underneath here. All right, the backup camera is position. Okay, your bliss looks like it's clearing okay. The toes are about to come over the sill. Okay, now drop your bliss down. There you go, you're clear. And laterally, you're good. Got an inch clearance on top of your bliss. Okay, you need a little bit of arching of the back to come down. That's like what you're doing. How far are my feet from the Okay, you're right at the edge of the porch. Okay. Back in from... Okay, I'm going to leave that 1 foot up there and both hands down about the 4th rung up. There you go. Okay, now I think I'll do the same. A little more. About another inch. There, you got it? That's a good step. Yep. About a 3-footer. Beautiful view. Isn't that something? Magnificent sight out here. Magnificent desolation.
Biotite is a brown mica substance.
Okay, Houston, I'm going to change lenses on you. Roger, Neil. Okay, Houston, tell me, get a new picture. Neil, this is Houston. That's affirmative. We're getting a new picture. You can tell it's a longer focal length lens. And for your information, all LEM systems are go. Over. For your information, all LEM. I appreciate that. Thank you. Houston, how close are you able to get things in focus? This is Houston. We can see Buzz's right hand. It's somewhat out of focus. I'd say we were focusing down to probably about 8 inches to a foot behind the position of his hand when he was pulling out the cable. Okay, how's the temperature look on there? Temperature of the camera is showing cold. I'm a little cool. I think I'll take some. I'm on intermediate now, Houston, and I show 3.78. No flags, 74. Houston, roger out. And we'll probably need a little distance at back location. Television camera. And Neil, let's look at the minus I stress. Your direction of travel there. traveling from right to left. Right. So this one over here underneath the mezzanine where the probe first hit. Minus my probe first hit. I got plenty of cable. You got plenty. Plenty more. Okay, I think I got the end of it. Something interesting in the bottom of this little crater here. Maybe. Keep going. We got a lot more. Okay. Getting a little harder to pull out here.
If you stand on the ladder facing forward, the minus Y strut is the landing gear to your left.
Say I am, Buzz. 40, 50 feet. Why don't you turn around and let them get a view from there and see what the field of view looks like. You're backing into the cable. Okay. Turn around to your right, you better. I don't want to go into the sun if I can avoid it. That's right, yeah. I'll just leave it. All right, let it sit like that and walk around it.
I mean, it's also stated it's uncut, so then it's not uncut. But here's the thing. Some kind of audio engineer actually mentioned this. Regardless of the timing in the video, the size of the transmitter would have to be so gigantic. I forget what he said. He said it would have to be something like a couple 100 feet or something like that in order to transmit to the Earth, and the delay would be astronomical. Because I believe he's using the calculation here as if it was on Earth with the correct transmitters. But it's on the moon, so it would be the size of the transmitter would have, and the power would have to be different. So I'm not sure how he got those numbers, but even if we assume best case scenario and they could transmit that fast, it still doesn't match up, which is what he's pointing out here. Unless there was some funny business editing, in which case they could clearly clear that up by releasing the uncut footage, which they said they did, but now all of a sudden it's not uncut? How do we still believe this? They even did a moon rock unveiling on Twitter. Right, but the lunar flag and track marks are nowhere. We have the International Space Station. This argument could be over by the end of next week. You know why they won't look? Because they think people care. Really, honestly, do you honestly care if we landed on the moon 50 years ago? No, and I completely understand because landing on the moon is a very tricky thing to do. What do you think the scheduled and out-of-control rocket was for? I apologize, I'm a bit cranky that I had to find this and that it has taken nearly 30 hours to complete, but hey, black holes. And that's that! Wow, I mean, yeah, I mean, there's tons of more evidence, obviously, like all the fake wires and all that in the footage. The 18,000 reels of telemetry data mysteriously disappearing. And then, of course, the moon rocks being petrified wood from Arizona. And that's without even getting into the psychology of the press conference after and all the interviews and all that. There's a couple other things, too, that were mentioned in other documentaries which I thought were hilarious. In the museum, in the NASA museum, or one of the museums, some guy came in with like a measuring tape and he measured the life support pack on the astronaut suit, and then he measured the hatch on the lander. and it couldn't fit without taking off the pack. So again, either it's just sheer incompetence and they had wrong sizes and those weren't the actual vehicles or suits used on the moon, even if they did go. But the fact that nothing adds up, I mean, that's kind of hilarious. And I mean, there's a ton of stuff. There's also all the scientists that mysteriously got killed, the hanging of the lemon in testing. Just weeks before, there's news footage or documentary footage about them asking the NASA scientists, those in charge of the program. They said they're not even close, that there's no metal materials that can withstand the temperatures. I mean, just there's so much that when you look at it in the context of time, because when it was all going down, all of a sudden then magically it happens and then nobody questions it for how long? Let's go into smoking gun number 2. And this one is weird. So WikiLeaks allegedly released the behind the scenes of the moon landing filmed in a desert in Nevada. Now, here's what's weird. This gets really, really weird because officially, there's no official WikiLeaks release. This was just labeled as such. The coincidence theorists then dismiss it. Oh, it wasn't really WikiLeaks that released it. And then they also mixed in some scenes from Capricorn 1. Well, here's the thing. If they really were going to do some kind of release, would they add in the plausible deniability? Because it's kind of destabilizing to just release something definitively like this. So is it more of a soft disclosure where there's a built-in plausible deniability? Where they don't release it officially, they release it unofficially, or maybe it's not even WikiLeaks. Maybe it's some other organization, they just use the WikiLeaks name, even if it's real behind the scenes, and then, just to make sure that it could be written off, they spliced in some Capricorn 1 footage just to leave it all ambiguous. But it's on archive.org. It's currently dated here, March 2nd, 2021, but here's the thing. This was up years ago. It's just been, I guess it's just put on archive at that date. But this is many years old. I don't know, is it at least 5-10 years old? But let's take a look at it here.
WikiLeaks has released more classified documents than the rest of the world's media combined.
Picking up the wounded. Returning information to gauge.
Light them all up.
You want to be in pictures.
That's the best. Let's say it's another one to print. I think that's awfully good. That one and the one before it was pretty good.
Do we have about 15 seconds?
Oh yeah, you got a lot of time here.
Yeah. I claim this land in the name of...
What do you got now? Now move. Cut it. Ready? And action.
Cut it?
Jim? There you go.
Print that.
Print
4.
He needs to go off this mark.
Once more, please.
Otherwise, he, train.
Let me walk it.
You tell me I don't want to back in the middle of it.
41. Here's what we really need is for him to go to his left and then kind of veer back. Is that right? No lights on the car. No lights. No lights. One more right away.
Headlight.
Exactly right, and it has to be. We have to be high enough so that we've got you against blue sky and not against Earth as you're coming in. You're coming in a descending approach as you get in.
Over. We can reverse it. said, go back and we'll rehearse it and see how it looks.
Okay.
Ready? And action.
Excellent.
Quiet.
Head's laid on the mic.
Ready? And action. Ready? And turn.
Use the second marker there.
Love you, and I
Well, this is a hell of a time not to.
That's right.
We're in a little deep now,
right.
fella, let me tell you.
We're rolling.
Stand by, here we go.
Marker? Yeah. Right now, Jim, that was better.
Forget it. Wait a minute.
Sorry. The third peak. Okay. Cut me a third.
Boy, Houston, the beauty of this place is just absolutely incredible. There's another spectacular view. The pilot who missed the crater. Watch out. Watch out, John.
Ready? And action.
Let's say it's another one to Fred. I think that's awfully good. Did they use clapsticks on this one? Be a mic tap hit.
Big. Action.
what the feelings of the Apollo program are, and the symbol of mankind that we can live in peace and harmony in the future.
I didn't kick him all the way into rather than even say anything about the, I like to keep the stuff to an absolute minimum.
Peter has...
coming up down, I'll call you off the ground.
Head slate. Go on ahead.
You didn't land there. You landed in the field.
Whoa.
Okay, you can... This will be the biplane coming overhead, about 300 feet.
The third seat. Okay. Cut the third.
Any other call?
Tail slide coming up right now.
Right now. Jim, that was better.
Rehearsal, guys.
All right, this is just rehearsal. Ready? And action.
Altitude's a little high.
I think it's been almost 10 years since we've been trying to do this. Pitch forward, get a really good view of the
You're
landing
looking
site.
great. Coming up 9 minutes. Roger, understand. Go for landing. 3,000 feet.
Peter has...
Coming up now, I'll call you off the ground.
Peter has put a mark back there where he wants you to land.
What's it look like?
5.5 pounds.
But it's a tire and
9
something.
forward. Forward.
Is this a good spot? Good to know? There. Yeah, that is.
Yeah, control. Command override off. Engine arm on.
We're home.
413 is in.
Man on the moon.
Okay. Ready? And action.
What do you think?
Well, it's not a good idea, but what were you going to do?
Ready? And action. Ready, and turn.
Right now. Jim, that was better.
Forget it. Wait a minute. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. This is this shot, right? Only then, what are you going to move around another master before you get in closer?
Oh no, this sequence right here. Now I'm moving to a two-shot of you that picks it up from there, and then moving into a four-shot that comes back from there. As the scene progresses, we're going around this thing. Yeah. Because I don't think you can divorce this conversation from that. I forget what just came from 5 solid minutes of this. Very important to understand that we're reacting the way we would react to seeing this.
Have you had a good pick?
So what does everyone make of that? I mean, this is some mind-shocking stuff. Would they really release something like this? Or is this some kind of mixed soft disclosure with plausible deniability built in? And that's something to think about, not just in the case of the moon landing, but some of these other conspiracies where if there was some kind of release of evidence, would they build in plausible deniability? So all of the gullible coincidence theorists can just immediately write the entire thing off in a false dichotomy logical fallacy by saying, oh, well, this little piece is from here, therefore the entire thing is wrong. The throwing the baby out with the bathwater fallacy. I mean, this just clueless goofery in coincidence theorist hallucination that everything would always be done in a black and white fashion. I mean, clearly they have no understanding of intel at all. The intelligence community does not always work in just easy black and white, because then, of course, it's harder to deny things or support things. Clearly, there's got to be some kind of muddying of the waters. Now, is that what was done here? I am not claiming that that was done here. I am just saying that if this is legitimate or certain pieces of it are legitimate, is it possible that they mixed in with some Capricorn 1 footage just so it could be written off? Because how would they do a real release of information regarding the moon landing hoax? Now, again, that doesn't mean they didn't go in general. That just means that the particular event that was filmed was staged or hoaxed, either while they were really on the moon or not. I mean, that's one of the better theories I've heard, that they did go and they simply, again, either Van Allen radiation belt or whatever, it just couldn't be filmed for whatever reason. And they really did go, but there's just no film that exists. Or maybe they did film it, but the real film was never released, again, for whatever reason. Those that believe in, like, the secret space programs and the bases on Mars, if they think that there was some kind of intelligent life out on the moon, and even bases and all this crazy stuff, in the Cydonia region, of course, there are the pyramids and the face on Mars. I mean, who knows if that's real or doctored or whatever. But if it was real, and if they really did go, and if there are remains of other civilizations, or possibly current active civilizations, UFO encounters, etc., they kind of had the plan to not film it just in case. Because why would they film it live? And here's another point. This is a very basic point I used in episode 1. NASA and the U.S. government would never take the chance. They would never broadcast this live just in case there was an accident or something, because they would look too bad. So they would never, even if they did go, there would never be a live broadcast. There would be a huge, huge delay, and it's just much safer to fake all the footage on Earth. You don't have to deal with the Van Allen radiation belts and all that stuff. So again, a lot of issues here. The flat earthers maintain that the moon might not even be a physical object you can land on, which is a pretty good point. Because if everything is faked and all the videos are faked, I mean, it would also be interesting to use this EMF extraction method on China's moon landing and all that fun. Was it China? Did China and Japan both go to the moon, or was it just China? But other countries' space programs allegedly going to the moon. I mean, this EMF extraction method is very, very interesting. And there possibly are even more smoking guns. I mean, there's definitely more evidence. We're going to go over them. Some of the funnest stuff is just the little details, like people spilling orange juice on their non-sealed astronaut suits, and this is all in the transcript, so we'll be going over that in future episodes, but just wanted to drop those two smoking guns. All the MindShock listeners out there, they can leave their thoughts, theories, comments, debunkings, or rebuttals of any kind in the comment section. Hope you guys enjoyed another edition of the MindShock podcast, the only podcast out there tackling all of these subjects, conspiracies, true crime cases, with logic and reason at the forefront, not falling for any of these logical fallacies or defaulting to blind faith in the corrupt with horrible track records of failure and lying. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. You could donate to our PayPal, like and share the podcast, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topological analysis podcast to request. You could also be a guest on the podcast depending on your tier. You could also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time. welcome to MINDSHOCK. This is your host, Bruce McGuire, here with the one and only Professor Jay Smith to continue our epistemological discussions on various topics. Today, we are tackling the alleged moon transmissions, how they filmed, what they filmed, how they transmitted back to the Earth, allegedly, and why they can't do it again in 2024. Bizarre, bizarre things. As always, if you want to help support the podcast, help logic and reason return to a world where it's quickly going extinct, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. If they're not coming through, just like and comment on more videos. That's how the YouTube algorithm works. You could also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Help support the channel that way. Like and share Reddit, Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcaster requests. You could also be a guest in the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. So, Professor Jay, how have you been? Are you excited to be back?
Yes, no, I'm ready to tackle some more issues here, and yeah, it's a powerful day in the sense that the whole supposed moon hoax is now settled, since it seems that we're back. We're back, baby.
Yeah, let's jump right into it. All right.
The moon landing, I've been shocked because I finally, in this last year or so, managed to figure out that the moon landing was suspect, and then all of a sudden, in one fell swoop, it seems like we really did go to the moon with that Odysseus landing. It's over. That's the joke I wanted to make.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hardly even looked at the Odysseus thing. I mean, I saw a little bit. It's so, yeah.
Now that you've mentioned that it's all been put to bed, it seems 2024 is the year. Who needs video? Who needs photos? I mean, The report should suffice, shouldn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, we landed, and it's been, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, this is our first landing of any kind of equipment or anything since the early 70s. Is this correct?
I mean, the U.S. supposedly, yeah. I don't know how you feel about China's landing. The footage looked unconvincing to me, but I don't know. Maybe it met your threshold.
Well, Americans certainly did. No, I just actually saw some footage. I was at another, because I've been enjoying checking out some Austin Whitsitt, and I saw these videos. I had never seen the Chinese moon landings before, and they look ridiculous. I mean,
well, hold on. Let's not appeal to incredulity. Maybe there are some kind of interdimensional rifts on the moon that are affecting the whatever radiation that's warping the video footage to make it look like that. It might still be all on the up and up.
Yeah, that's true. And actually, the unique nature of that radiation coming off the moon might be particularly targeted at Chinese technology or something. Yeah. So it may be the reason that their Earth actually looks flat. I mean, it doesn't even really look.
Well, especially if they cheaped out on their components, because if they're mass producing all of their space equipment like they do with toys or all the other equipment, perhaps it's not properly shielded for all of these as of yet undiscovered interdimensional rifts on the moon.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and you definitely are not going to survive those interdimensional rifts, with cheap Chinese equipment.
Yeah. I mean, we should be thanking our lucky stars they managed to get any footage at all, because, I mean, apparently NASA can't anymore. I mean, apparently they're able to, I don't know if you know this, but the reason we're able to have high definition moon footage from the Apollo missions is because they were actually recorded in high definition in the 60s. High definition, which didn't come out on the consumer market until, let me get the year right, because I want to be as accurate as possible here.
Certainly, if I were to guess, it's at least 90s
So
for high def.
actually, let's see what Merriam-Webster actually. Wow, you know what's wild? Merriam-Webster says that I guess the first known use of the words high definition was in 1981. It doesn't say in reference to what, like not video, maybe not video. I don't know, but that's kind of curious because the first, according to Webster, high definition itself was not a phrase until 1981.
Huh. Yeah, that is interesting.
But let's see the actual first broadcast. I want to say 2000s, but so high definition videos, for those that don't know, the resolution is 1920 by 1080, which obviously far in excess. Now, here's what's wild. So I mean, I don't know if we should do a whole history lesson on how many lines of resolution there are, but bear with me here. So 1920 by 1080 is high def. Now, standard definition is considered 480. So the first electronic scanning format was 405 lines. So from 1939, Europe and the US tried 605 and 441 lines. In 1941, the FCC mandated 525 for the US. In wartime France, René Bartholomew tested high res up to 1,042 lines. That is curious. In late 49, I actually didn't know that. In late 49, official French transmission. Wow, this is actually wild. In late 49, official French transmissions began with 819 lines, which is, I mean, that's pretty good. That's more than double the standard. However, this standard was abandoned for 625. So, I mean, call me crazy. How many times in history do we see far better technology being abandoned for inferior technology? For example, the car tire, the first tire developed was one that couldn't be punctured or had a far lower puncture rate, but they didn't release that one. They released the one that was able to be punctured.
Yeah. Again, there's just so many holes in our system, because it seems like there's so many stories like that where the product that would be completely superior, they won't let out. The light bulb seems like that's a classic example of that.
Not to mention the electric car. I mean, they had electric cars. Actually, we probably should do a podcast just on the electric car. I don't remember the exact dates. I'm not sure if the electric car actually came out before the Model T or at the same time, but it was
that's interesting.
Yeah.
I have a couple of stories associated with electric cars, associated with my not from when the work I was doing there, but it's affiliated with the national lab that I worked at, which I'm aware of. They were doing projects with electric cars, which it was actually with a private company that had the ingenuity to develop one, and basically the national lab I'm referring to partnered with that small company and then crushed it. Basically, they did electric cars, but then I actually have an electric car from that era that I got from someone that I knew. Yeah. Have you ever heard of a Zap?
It does sound familiar.
It was like a greenish. It was a greenish electric car, kind of from the early 90s, I think.
Are you familiar with the electric boat car plane? It was like a car, but it was also a boat, and it also had these wings that unfolded, so it was like a mini plane. That came out in the 70s. I believe there
wow.
was an electric version of that as well.
Just either electric or fuel powered. That would be you definitely feel like James Bond in that particular
Yeah, there's a
vehicle.
video of, I think they might have just done prototypes. I don't think it was ever mass produced, or if so, in extremely limited numbers, so not really mass produced. But there were a couple of prototypes, and the videos were so cool. As far as I know, there weren't any accidents or anything with them. It was, and they were priced on the high side, but not more expensive than like a Ferrari.
Huh. Well, I've realized. I mean, I'm not an expert by any stretch in like the nature of the electric car, but and again, I don't know what all Elon Musk is up to, or with the. By the way, isn't it seem almost insulting that the name of that car is Tesla? I mean, does that strike you as?
Yes, and now you've confirmed that we need to do a dedicated electric car podcast just based on that. But yes, there's
Okay,
so much. Yeah.
I was going to inject that I mean, I feel like I'm only aware of the fringes of it, but keeping electric cars or keeping that technology from becoming mass produced until now with Elon Musk, I think there's a lot of conspiracies around
let's
this.
be accurate. Elon Musk did not found Tesla or SpaceX. He just brought money in after it was already founded.
Okay.
So again, for the people that give Elon Musk credit, I want to be very precise here. Elon Musk did not found any of those companies. They already existed.
Yeah, it seems like it's becoming increasingly evident that he's just a mouthpiece for something.
Not only that, he's missed every deadline he ever gave. I mean, even his electric roof tiles completely, I mean, he promised those for incredibly cheap prices. Not only did it end up being 4 times more, but it wasn't even as efficient as everything else on the market. That was a total failure. Nobody wants to talk about that. They're just distracted that he bought Twitter. But anyway, we kind of got on a huge aside. Let's get back to the high def moon transmission. So
fair enough. Although one last Elon Musk question: have you heard anything? Because I just heard about this. There's like some sort of character. Again, I'm very on the periphery of a lot of this online stuff, but there's somebody who it's like possibly an AI Elon Musk that's talking. That's been in some of these chats. Have you heard about this?
No, I haven't seen that.
Okay, we'll leave it, but
well, on the subject of Musk, we need to do a dedicated podcast on that because I don't know how much you know about him. Supposedly, allegedly, I am not claiming anything is true or untrue. This is MINDSHOCK, where the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. Supposedly, allegedly, he comes from some blood diamond family, and his father's really connected into that world and possibly Illuminati connections as well. It seems like almost all these guys, none of them really came from nothing, like Bill Gates, Elon Musk. Steve Jobs is curious. I haven't done as big of a deep dive into him, but all these other guys that are kind of credited as these huge tech entrepreneurs with great minds, they were all bankrolled. None of them really came from nothing by the virtue of their own mind.
Yeah. And I think I mentioned that before. It really irritates me that like this worship of these people.
Yeah.
And yet, when you peek beneath the surface, or even one that sort of stunned me once was William Randolph Hearst, right?
Yeah.
Well, I had remembered from reading The Fountainhead that even though he's not a real likable character in it, and I don't know if anyone's familiar with that book, but Ayn Rand, she models one of the characters. I'm a
fan of hers.
Yeah, actually, we could talk about that too. I'm not. I whole history. My parents were real active in the Libertarian Party actually. So I was a little kid, so I was getting exposed to things that it was way outside of the normal.
Well, then politics. you gotta be prepared for the MINDSHOCKer question, the listener questions, which are going to include: are you an MK Ultra plant shill?
Oh, okay.
They're coming at some point. Those questions are going to come.
Oh, okay. And okay, I'll start to prepare myself to divert attention since clearly I am.
Oh, well, the first red flag is that
revealed.
you didn't immediately deny it.
Yeah. Okay. So more suspicion than well.
All right, let's get focused here so this doesn't turn into a JR type podcast. But
I was going to complain about William Randolph Hearst because Ayn Rand kind of presents her as he bootstrapped himself up, and then come to find out later he's the son of George Hearst, that miner, that out of the 1800s.
You know what's kind of weird though. A lot of these guys like Bill Gates, Elon Musk, I don't know if they were the ones who created that image that they built it all themselves. That was more the media. I don't remember. I haven't seen all the interviews. But I don't remember them specifically saying that they came from nothing.
No, I don't remember Bill Gates ever really referring to his background. Everyone kind of knows it a little bit, at least on the surface. But he, too, also has some of those fishy background things, too, doesn't he? Or bloodlines type connections.
Oh, yeah. We touched upon that, I think, off air. But, all right, let's get focused here.
All right, but Bill Gates really gets on my nerves. Okay, let's get focused.
Okay. So modern HD specs, I'm actually surprised because I thought that it would have been closer to the 90s. The early 1980s, Japanese engineers developed the high vision 1,125 line interlaced TV standard, also called Muse. That's an interesting name. Medea, goddess of illusions. Muses who inspire. It's very interesting. It was actually developed. Okay, the design effort started in 1979. So they started the design well after the moon landings, but somehow they not only had high def video, but they transmitted it live with almost no delay from the moon to the. I mean, think about how wild this is. I mean, the coincidence theorists that just buy this, I mean, maybe they did. Maybe they had some top secret spec technology, but according to the reports, they listed every piece of equipment they had. It's not classified. They used some basic transmitters, and I think they were pointed the wrong way. If you
I saw that too. And also it seems, and again, these are things that if you don't investigate it, see, that's perhaps part of the discussion should be the psychology yet again. And most people that are so convinced that we went to the moon, they've just never looked, especially now, so many years after the fact.
But think about how ludicrous this is. If you set up a little transmitter at the top of a hill, it's not even going to make it down the hill if you point it the wrong way, but people are buying that they transmit high-resolution video live from the moon while pointing their tiny little transmitter the wrong direction.
Exactly. No, I saw the same thing. And tiny is also the operative word. Pointing the wrong direction, and then being like it's just a little old thing that's supposed to be transmitting, as I recall, and I think you may have mentioned, I've heard this a few places, but some engineer had calculated, I mean, the size of what you would need to broadcast from the moon, supposedly at the distance that it is.
Yeah, it would have been a skyscraper.
Yeah, something massive.
And
then
not only that, but even if it was a skyscraper, there would still be a massive delay, not to mention they would be dropping frames like crazy. I mean, even in modern YouTube streams, we get drops and glitches. I mean, they're going from the moon in high def. I mean, it's just insane. But I am impressed with this Muse technology. So they started designing it in 1979. So over a decade after the alleged moon landings. And it was still impressive though, because it could deliver 1,125 lines, 60 field per second. So for those that don't know about interlaced and progressive scan, I'm not going to go into that, but it obviously, the older tech it didn't have every single line scanned. It was alternate lines. But anyway, it was the early 80s when high vision was developed, and it could run at 60 frames per second, which is cool because the first 60 frame per second broadcasts, I believe, were in the 2000s. But continuing on here, the Sony HDVS system was presented at an international meeting of television engineers in Algiers, April 1981. That's an interesting place to have that. Do we need to get into an occult angle here? So they're presenting this in Algiers, the largest city in Algeria. When was the last time a tech conference was held in Algeria? I mean, I'm just wondering.
No, that's exactly. I mean, and I didn't think of it as an occult angle, although who knows, there probably is. But yeah, I have never. I mean, especially something so cutting edge as what we're talking about. You know, Japan, Germany, United States, Algiers.
Well, do you want to guess? Do you want to guess the other country they went to debut this?
To debut the technology?
Yeah.
So is it going to be another weird one like Algeria? Or?
Switzerland.
Oh.
I mean, this has Knights Templar written all over.
Yeah, no, definitely.
We're not going to go down that rabbit hole for this podcast, but we probably should make a note to investigate the development of TV technology and why there's an international meeting of television engineers in Algiers.
In Algiers in the 80s too, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, it is a diplomatic country, but as far as like there is a lot of like political meetings there. But as far as I know, nothing to do with. I've never heard of like it being a tech hub. I mean, I'm doing a quick. I'm doing a quick scan on it now. Ottoman rule. I mean, I haven't seen it being a hub for tech conferences at all.
Because this is 80s, right?
Yes.
Because also, it seemed like it was in huge tumult. I mean, I guess it was the 60s that they had a vicious war for liberation against France, right? Algeria.
Let's see the years here.
I mean, they had a really brutal battle to try and get rid of France, which they're still trying to do, I guess. But so I would think in the 80s, I mean, of all those sort of Northern African countries,
from 1980 to 1962. From 1830 to 1962, Algeria had a relationship with France. But speaking of mud flood, the Algerian railway in the 1890s looks pretty spectacular. I'm just on the wiki. Their railway, like so, this is horse and buggy here.
Wow. Huh.
This is horse and buggy. And it looks spectacular. I mean, we're talking Greek columns, Roman arches, all these stone buildings. Meanwhile, there's literal horses in the foreground.
Yeah, everything you expect from Algeria.
Yeah. So there was the French invasion in 1830. And then during the 30s, there was the complete redesign, allegedly. And World War II, Algiers was the first city to be seized from the Axis by the Allies in Operation Terminal. 1962, after a bloody independence struggle in which hundreds of thousands died. Wow. Yeah, 350,000 to 1.5 million people died.
That's what I'm talking about. I've looked in books on the subject, and I mean, there's been so many of those, but it was an especially bloody effort.
Yeah, that was 54 to 62.
Which is also because the French were getting kicked out of Vietnam around that time too. I guess they were having to retreat worldwide.
Apparently, they also had a crisis in the 90s. I do not remember this. There were political demonstrations until 93. In 91, a political entity dominated by religious conservatives called the Islamic Salvation Front engaged in a political test of wills with authorities. In the 92 elections for the Algerian National Assembly, the Islamists garnered a large amount of support in the first round. Fearing an eventual win by the Islamists, the army canceled the election process, setting off a civil war. I don't even remember this civil war in Algeria. Do you remember this?
Just vaguely. The main thing that I remember when I think of Algerian history, the main thing I know was that was like one of those really scarring. I mean, we're obviously not very aware of it here, but for the Algerians and the French that were there, it was really
but it
ugly.
it looks like it was relatively quiet after their independence.
And you said their independence was in 80, or when was their independence?
62. Well, here's another coinky dink. July 5th, 1962. You can't make this stuff up. I mean, it's off by a day, but still, that's a little weird. And
well, actually, let me just ask, because I'm having trouble locking on July 5th, 1962. Why is that a weird date? The Steel Day or something? Or?
Oh no, because America's independence is July 4th.
Oh, okay.
They're one day off on July. So there's 365 days a year. So out of all the days,
yeah.
I mean, it's not as big of a coincidence as July 4th, but it's almost there.
Yeah. And it's also, I feel like we should train ourselves to always kind of look, just to ask the question.
I always do. Apparently, in 88, 1 year before the fall of the Berlin Wall, shout out to David Hasselhoff, the man, the myth, the legend that actually brought down the wall. If you haven't seen his performance.
So is he, because I saw you had a podcast on Hasselhoff, and I have to choose. So I haven't seen that one yet.
This is blasphemous. You call yourself a MINDSHOCK fan and you haven't seen the David Hasselhoff podcast?
Oh, I know, for shame.
This is the most prolific human being that has possibly ever existed in any industry.
Well, so I've known some German folks, and it really blew me away. He's so popular there, and for his music, not for his lifeguarding skills, Well,
let me just say this. The Berlin Wall did not come down until he sang Looking for Freedom on Sight. I will say that.
So he's a revolutionary, taking walls down.
It is. I mean, you call it how you want, but until he sang his song, the wall did not come down.
Perhaps.
It will always be part of history for that alone. I mean, obviously for Knight Rider, Baywatch, and Baywatch Nights. Everybody sleeps on Baywatch Nights. I can't believe that hasn't had a Blu-ray release yet.
Yeah.
I mean, people think it was unrealistic for Mitch Buchanan to be a lifeguard during the day and a PI at night. But think about this. In real life, he was shooting both shows simultaneously while doing music tours and releasing new albums all over the world.
Do you think there's anything suspicious about Hasselhoff as far as
potential? Well, you'll have to check out the podcast. Maybe you should be on Hasselhoff Part 2.
Okay, and I'll definitely I've got to see the Hasselhoff. It's just everything is getting so weird.
Come on, you have no excuse. You have no excuse. I only have 4,500 podcasts on the MINDSHOCK channel. It's not like I have millions. It's only 4,500.
Many very interesting, and also multiple hours too, for an individual.
I mean, some of them might be 20 hours long, but I mean, it's not that. It's not like they're weeks long.
Yeah, no,
you can find the time. You can find the time. All right, so let's deal with.
Well, let me get one question, if I may, on Hasselhoff. Just in this strange era, I'm opening up to more and more possibilities. Do you think Hasselhoff? Well, you're saying I have to watch podcasts, but thinking of like a Chuck Barris type of guy, or one of these, who, again, I don't know that he was an agent or anything either, but I just, it's hilarious. I've never thought of David Hasselhoff as being a meaningful.
He's revolutionary in every sense. In every sense of the word.
All right, well, I'll get back to you on Hasselhoff.
Now that we're talking here, we're going to have to examine his ties. He has to have ties to NASA. He has ties to everything else. So,
yeah, surely he's been to space or the moon.
Okay, so In Algiers, apparently a year before the Berlin Wall, there were demonstrations known as the Spring of Algiers. 300 people died. And then in 89, there was a new constitution. So they probably have Hasselhoff to thank as well, because that was the wall coming down.
Yeah, he probably did a little jaunt over there to stir things up too.
So apparently it was relatively quiet from 62 to 88. And then in the 90s, there's another decade of political unrest. And then in December 11th, 2007, 2 car bombs exploded in Algiers. One bomb targeted 2 UN office buildings, and the other targeted a government building housing the Supreme Court. The death toll was at least 62, with over 200 injured. Wow. As of 2008, that was 2007. As of 2008, it is speculated that the attack was carried out by the Al-Qaeda cell within the city. Indigenous terrorist groups have been actively operating in Algeria since around 2002. But, okay. Yeah, I was just looking at the exact equipment they used. They used a Hasselblad 500 EL data camera. The Apollo 11 Hasselblad camera. I mean, obviously, film actually, when converted to digital, film is closer to 4K scans. But
especially the Hasselblad, I think.
What was that?
Hasselblad.
Yeah,
well, I think especially the Hasselblad
EL.
is a large format. What's that?
Yeah, it was actually, so the film was a double perforated 70 millimeter film. So that's around IMAX. IMAX standard is 70 millimeter.
So, one question that I've had lingering through this whole podcast is the broadcast from the moon at the time, late 60s, early 70s, that was in high def?
So,
or supposedly?
I don't know, because I don't know what they used for the scan, because I'm assuming it wasn't, but the data was there. It just so it didn't broadcast all of it, because who could be watching in high def? Then again,
right?
Mission Control had that giant screen though, which was obviously way better quality than a little TV. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's kind of hard to find information other than the list of equipment used.
Well, also, are you saying that we see until I started looking into this just somewhat recently, but to me, the first clue that we have some kind of government hijinks going on, is when like 7,000 documents, everything associated with the moon landing just disappears into some government.
Hold on. Let's try to focus on the broadcast here. So apparently it was a 2.5 hour continuous feed. High def or not, I mean, for that feed to not even be interrupted, I mean, this is wild. I mean, think about it. A news crew, I mean, I don't know about today, so maybe post 2010, they can do it wirelessly, but pre-2000, so all throughout the 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, you need an entire van with a huge dish to try all the, like, think about the amount of cables they'd run even on a regular street to broadcast live. And there's still a delay on that. Think about that.
Yeah,
it's not instant to the second, whereas according to the raw footage, if any MindShock listeners haven't checked out the Apollo missions podcast series on MindShock, I actually play a pretty extensive section of what is alleged to be the raw feed, meaning nothing is edited. There are some responses going back and forth with less than 2 seconds of delay. Think about that. So unless they're lying about that, I mean, the delay itself is pretty smoking gun evidence, because on the non-raw feed, you can say, oh, they edited it for those long minutes and minutes of pauses. But on their own alleged raw feed, there are sometimes the delay is almost it's shorter than a delay from a news crew broadcasting here on Earth on the street to a TV station that's literally a block away. Because that still has a couple seconds of delay.
Yeah, and a block away there's actually a news place fairly close to where I live with several massive satellites out there for broadcasting, not like a little flimsy shoebox size.
Yeah, apparently. So you know what's kind of weird though? So because I'm looking at the National Museum. Believe it or not, Scotland has a pretty good write-up on it. So apparently Scottish innovator John Logie Baird developed a small, robust television camera that enabled the live broadcast from this mission. So the camera was developed in 28. So supposedly, I mean, think about this is what
you said the camera you said it was developed in 28. Did you mean 68 or
1928?
Oh,
so
1928.
So that's the robust camera. So it doesn't say here. It doesn't say how they fed the high def through that camera. I mean, you would think it would say how they did that. So apparently it was 10 times a second to scan images. It was a low res broadcast. But it also says that 3 separate broadcast transmissions were recombined at mission control to get a color image. So this makes it even worse. So they didn't have one stream. They had 3 separate simultaneous streams, somehow all flawlessly, not interrupted, that produced a color image, and then that image was converted to an electric signal, which was beamed to televisions around the world. Okay.
So just to recap, to make sure I understand that. So, I mean, obviously there's so many gaps in the story, but
there is.
So because they have these low res cameras, they're broadcasting 3 separate streams from the moon.
Hold on a second. The transmission was supposedly low res. So they're using the Hasselblad cameras to get high def video footage.
See, I always think of Hasselblad as being for photography, not for film.
Oh no. They must have film too. They actually have some of the best cameras. They're amazing.
Well, I know they're great, like film cameras or photo cameras, but I didn't realize they did video and stuff too. But okay.
Well, get this. So, actually, this doesn't make any sense. There's 3 different stories here. Because it also says that Neil Armstrong's first steps on the moon were beamed back from a low-res black and white television camera. The camera remains on the moon where Armstrong left it. Okay. So there's apparently there's 4 different cameras here. So
okay. So 1 black and white camera got left behind, and then 3 other cameras. And then, so they're broadcasting the stuff in real time to Houston, where they are stitching together the 3 separate broadcasts.
So that's actually not. So for anybody that remembers old TVs, and that's why there's different colors. There's the yellow cable, the red cable. Like there were different cables for each color, and you plug them all in. Even the first DVD players have that, like before the HDMI cables came out.
Yeah.
So that's not unusual. What I'm saying is, what are the chances they all transmitted perfectly? Each separate transmission was flawless.
Well, that's what I mean. And if I'm understanding you, and then exactly getting 3 separate streams. I mean, first of all, the whole thing's kind of ridiculous on its premise in certain ways, but to put 3 streams together in live time for the entire world to see.
Well, where they broadcast it from mission control to the TV station, I don't have a problem with that, obviously. They can broadcast anything from mission control to a TV station. My
Well, no, I
issue
guess
is
perhaps I'm misunderstanding, but it just seemed like you were also saying that it's not just putting one stream though. They're also having to do a little value added at Mission Control, aren't they, to combine
yes. So
three
the
streams into
streams.
one?
So there's a minimum of 3 streams, possibly 4 or 5, but there's a minimum of 3 allegedly coming from the moon to Mission Control, where they're live combined to form a color image, and then from there they're broadcast out. Now
Seamlessly to the world.
supposedly the live broadcast was only color, was not color initially. So the replays were color, but the first stream was, but that's all besides the point, because what camera are they using for their high def videos? Because if they're using the Hasselblad, and then they also have these other cameras, and then they developed their own prototype television camera, the Mark V, which was a sequential color television camera prototype. So they basically had to develop their own camera. It doesn't specifically say why. I'm guessing because it was the sequential color television system in order to be able to transmit back in color. But apparently they also shot high def video, which is what is in the NASA archive. That's why you can go, it wasn't AI. They released the high def, I don't know, 20 years ago. I mean, it was quite a number of years ago where they released the high def footage from the moon. So maybe the high def footage wasn't broadcast. I don't know. I don't know.
Because since they lost so much of the original materials.
Well, what they lost was the telemetry reels. I don't know if they claim to have lost just the regular video, because the regular video, if it's faked, it doesn't matter. The telemetry data is what you want to see if they were really going to the moon.
Yeah. I mean, the idea that they would lose anything associated with that project, if we were really, if it was really being done, is inconceivable.
In staying consistent with exhaustive MINDSHOCK fashion, let's go back to Algiers for a second, because I'm still trying to figure out why television engineers are having their conference in Algiers when premiering this high definition technology, because it's apparently this not peaceful area, although I guess in the 80s it was peaceful enough. But
it seems like a bizarre choice as a place for television engineers, and especially in 1981. You're getting into like Sadat's about to get assassinated. I mean, it's not
the first major sporting event was the Mediterranean Games, which was held there in 75. And then the All Africa Games in 78, and then the African Handball Nations Championship in 89. Handball was no joke in the 80s. I don't know if you play handball, but handball was that was no joke in 89.
I've always been a big racquetball guy more, and both of those sports, racquetball and handball, I think took off in that time. So no, Algeria, well, if they had the handball championship in 89, it definitely speaks to them being on the map, I guess, a little more.
Well, the African handball champ, not the world.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah. But yeah, no, it is weird. It's just weird, man. So they have this see, if they were still under French connection, that would make sense, because France and Paris and a few other cities, I mean, that's a known business destination. I mean, French, for those that don't know, at least in the past, English is considered the language of the world, but French was actually considered the business language. Like all the years ago when I was in school, after American, French was considered the international language of business.
Well, yeah, I mean, French, lingua franca. I mean, it was the international language, and then kind of English usurped.
Yeah. So France
that
wouldn't
position,
have been.
I think.
So if it
but
was
a bunch of those African countries.
I mean,
Oh,
I
go
don't
ahead.
know, unless there were just that many French diplomats pulling strings to get this TV tech conference, but apparently
Even the association with France, though, it still seems weird.
because of the bloody war.
Because
yeah.
What's that?
Because of the bloody war,
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, France is maybe still. I mean, because they still are meddling in these places, even though they're supposed to be kicked out. But
yeah,
I don't think they would. Even if there's a connection, I don't think they would do hold a conference like that in Algiers. I mean, that would be. They would hold it in France, I would think. If they had anything.
Yeah. So that was 81, and then nothing happened until 83, where Japan presented. I actually didn't know this. They presented a high definition analog television system, literally HD TV, was presented at a Swiss conference in 1983. 83. That's wild.
Yeah.
The NHK system was standardized in the US as the Society of Motion Picture and Television Engineers Standard 240M in the early 90s, but abandoned later on when it was replaced by DVB analog standard. High vision video is still usable for HDTV video interchange, but there is almost no modern equipment available to perform this function. Attempts at implementing high vision as a 6 megahertz broadcast channel were mostly unsuccessful. All attempts at using this format for terrestrial TV transmission, that's an interesting phrase, isn't it?
Yes, isn't it?
Were abandoned by the mid-90s, so they couldn't get it to work.
They could get it to work on Earth.
Yeah.
They should have flown up to the moon again. It's easier than all this fakery,
I'm guessing there was a conspiracy in Algiers that suppressed this technology.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if David Hasselhoff would be involved. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, no, that seems up his in his bailiwick.
Europe developed HDMAC, which is 1,250 lines, 50 hertz, a member of the MAC family of hybrid analog digital video standards. However, it never took off as a terrestrial video transmission format. HDMAC was never designated for video interchange except by the European Broadcasting Union. Digital high def was not possible with uncompressed video due to impractically high memory and bandwidth requirements, with a bit rate exceeding 1 gigabyte a second for full HD video. Digital HD TV was enabled by the development of discrete cosine transform video compression, DCT, a lossy compression technique that was first proposed by Nasir Ahmed in 72. Okay, if this guy's from Algeria.
I was just going to say that too.
Okay, well,
that perhaps explains it.
Hold on. Apparently he's not. So he was born in Bangalore, India. He's an Indian-American electrical engineer and computer scientist. And he's professor at the University of New Mexico. So he has nothing to do with Algeria.
Okay.
He might have never even been to
Algeria,
unless it was for that conference. But
that guy, Ahmed, he invented something in 72. Is that what you said?
Nasir Ahmed was the engineer who first proposed DCT video compression. So this was later adapted into a motion compensated DCT algorithm for video coding standards such as H.26x formats from 1988 onwards, and the MPEG formats from 93 onwards. Motion compensated DCT compression significantly reduced the amount of memory and bandwidth required for digital video, capable of achieving a data compression ratio of about 100:1 compared to uncompressed video. By the early 90s, DCT video compression had been widely adopted as the video coding standard for HDTV. The current high-def video standards in North America were developed during the course of the advanced television process initiated by the Federal Communications Commission in 1987 at the request of American broadcasters. In essence, the end of the 80s was a death knell for most analog high-def technology that developed at that time. The FCC process led by the Advanced Television Systems Committee, and that's the other thing too, like how many different committees are there? I mean,
yeah. And
there's
actually, it seems
actually
like
an
some of this
advanced,
also.
so there's all these different television committees, and there's also an Advanced Television Systems Committee.
Yeah, yeah. No, that seems excessive. It also seems. I mean, again, I'm not expert. I'm just speaking whatever comes to mind. But it seems like in that transition to the high def, there's always an economic component too, where they try and force everyone into the new tech, which seems like that they've been, based on deciding certain standards. And it seems like I remember there was a point where I had to give up on the older TV that I had because, in fact, yeah, there was a moment, wasn't there, when high def, it's like if you don't have you won't be able to receive anything if you don't have a high def TV or something to that effect.
Yeah, I think didn't they roll that back many times?
Yeah, they kept trying to force it, I think, and then finally did, I think, somewhere in the aughts, I think. But
oh wow, here's a mind shock. Hold
I'm
on a
in.
second. I'm about to have is this a Mandela effect? Because I was generally familiar with a lot of this, and I do not remember this ever being anywhere. So apparently the BBC began the world's first regular high-def television service November 2nd, 1936. But wait a second.
Whoa.
Wait. No, it wasn't really high def though. So,
okay.
Okay. So it was 240 lines, and they also had a 405 line broadcast, and did not like the new medium term high def. Okay, yeah. That meant something else in 36. It was defined as a minimum of 240 lines, where today it's 1080.
Okay.
So no. Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Quick aside, just you mentioned something that I wouldn't mind discussing at some future point, but that Mandela effect, that's one of those I'm not versed in it. When I first heard about that from someone telling me all of a sudden, oh, it's the Mandela effect, and I asked what, and I wouldn't mind understanding it better because it seems really like distracting.
I've been working on an entire series for literally years now because I wanted to make it comprehensive.
Okay.
We should definitely save that because I want to go over all this stuff. The first HD TV broadcast was January 1st, 2004.
Okay.
So
that sounds weird.
Yeah, just for reference. And you know what's kind of weird though? Even like I'm trying to look up how exactly the broadcast was done during the Apollo missions, and it's very telling that they don't say exactly. They say there were 3 different streams. I mean, they don't talk about the bandwidth. Like I'm trying to find that information.
Well, and especially at that level of government institution, I mean, if they weren't actually broadcasting, they may have not bothered to fill in all of those details. Just said it was 3 streams, and
Okay, here we go. This is pretty much the best I think I'm gonna find here. Science Media Museum. So you're not gonna believe it. Oh wow, this is wild. Okay, so apparently they used. Wow, I can't believe this. So okay, I'll read through this. So Apollo 10 technically broadcasted live color TV transmissions from space. So they apparently they didn't do it for Apollo 11, but somehow they did it for Apollo 10. So they did an orbit around the moon and apparently transmitted live color.
Because Apollo 11 is the one that the script had it with the mess up, right?
No,
and then they go
13. That was 13. Apollo 11
13.
was the first man landing on the moon.
Okay, that's what I thought. Because then you said Apollo 10, and I was like,
Apollo
wait.
10 was just an orbit. It was a manned. It was the fourth human manned space flight, but it was the second orbit of the moon. But they didn't land on the moon. They just orbited it allegedly.
Allegedly, yeah.
Yeah. So it was only 2 months later that they did the Apollo 11 mission.
Okay.
So apparently, somehow they were able to broadcast live color TV transmission.
Live color TV on Apollo 10,
right?
But not on Apollo 11.
Correct.
Yeah, that's sort of peculiar.
So for Apollo, well, if they were trying to get higher quality, perhaps that's why they did allegedly they did the 3 different transmissions to blend the color. So technically, it was color. It just wasn't a single color.
Oh, okay. Or they might have done that red, red, yellow, whatever the primary colors to combine them. Maybe they had one stream of each.
I'm trying to find videos of the Apollo 10 footage just to compare. Did Austin go over that on his stream?
No, I don't recall hearing. In fact, Apollo 10, the thing that I've been aware of for years, although now I feel like it's even that much more of a tragedy. I still remember their names, actually, Grissom, White, and Chaffee. I remember learning them in school, but that's the thing I remember prior to 11, because it was not long before Apollo 11 when Grissom was saying, we're not going to the moon. This thing's not going anywhere. Right. And then, I mean, everything, again, I want to keep my mind shock. I want to stay vigilant on the logic, but I mean,
it's a couple seconds of the Earth that they're broadcasting. Supposedly the first live. I mean, it looks like a cartoon to me, but this is weird. So, what was the alleged first photo of the Earth from space? So this was alleged. So the blue marble is supposedly December 7th, 1972. So why?
So it was like a ladder flight. I figured the blue marble was from 69, but
no. That's from 72, and Apollo 10 launched May 18th, 69. So it's only 2 months. So why? So, and in this footage, okay, so apparently the bottom of the Earth I don't know if this is cropped. A little bit of it isn't seen, but it's pretty much the entire Earth in a live color broadcast. And I mean, maybe the reason they don't use it as evidence is because it just doesn't look real. I mean,
it does not. Because this is supposed to be 68 Apollo 10. It doesn't have the look of the blue marble of 72
it's 69, and it's 2 months before Apollo 11, but it's just a little blurrier. But the weird thing is that it's like the cloud formations are frozen, which is weird to me. Yeah, I'm looking right on the NASA's YouTube channel. So I'm looking at NASA's footage directly from NASA. And yeah, it's wild. So okay.
Yeah, I'm wondering if Apollo 10 maybe was using some of the Chinese equipment.
No, it still looks better than theirs. But
well, just thinking because that the Chinese Earth is. I've seen.
Hold on, let's go through this alleged transmission.
All right.
So there was intense debate within NASA about whether a television camera should be carried in Apollo 11's lunar module, as it would add weight to the spacecraft. Eventually, a black and white Westinghouse camera with a 16mm lens was approved. Deployment of a TV camera to transmit signals to Earth became one of the additional flight objectives. And I don't know why they're not talking about the Hasselblad cameras, because where they filmed high-def video film. So how many cameras did they have? 3, 4? And they did all this different filming? I mean, maybe, but it's just a little weird. So
Well, it is weird because I also get an image when you say that, remembering what these television news cameras and stuff were in that era. It's kind of like talking about the mainframe computers. I mean, they were so big and bulky. Now, obviously, they're going to be reduced size for them, but
okay,
I'm not an expert on the moon, like seeing all the pictures or going through all of the footage, but I don't recall seeing cameras. I feel like what I recall seeing is little Hasselblad photo cameras on their chests, which would be very hard to take pictures with, probably in one of those big suits. But I don't really. I mean, am I missing something? Or I don't really remember
there's
video
footage of
cameras that much.
various cameras. I just sent you a link. So check out the link I just sent you. I want your opinion on, if you can open that. It says operating the lunar camera. Do you see that the so-called antenna?
Yes.
Testing the moon television antenna. Do you believe that little umbrella can go from the moon to Earth with
You
no
mean can
delay?
broadcast from the moon to Earth?
Yeah.
No.
Well, not to mention, where are all the cables? Like, they's got like a tiny little transmission cable, but that's it. How is that enough? I mean, look at a TV news crew with their van and their dozens and dozens of feet of cable.
Yeah, and heavy.
Yeah.
Like also
Yeah.
when their dish is not like that, looks like a little toothpick.
So yeah, it says here.
Again, it's like from a Chinese drink. It's one of those little umbrellas they put in a Chinese drink.
As Neil Armstrong eased himself onto the porch of the lunar module, he opened up a storage assembly attached to the lander's lower stage. Contained within it, surrounded by gold-colored installation blankets, was the black and white Westinghouse television camera. To ensure it was able to record images of the mission, the small camera was specially equipped to deal with the high contrast between light and shade on the moon. Now, here we're going to have another huge problem, because if the moon's surface really is so incredibly bright, how did they, I mean, how would they have even been able to get anything? Because, I mean, you can do this experiment with, let's say, like a light that you can stand on, like a floor, a lit floor, like an expensive dance floor with a lit surface. Once you adjust the exposure for the extreme brightness, you're not going to be able to see anything else.
Just the floor.
Yeah, if you adjust the contrast to the surface of the moon, you're not going to be able to see anything else. So
well,
it's
so
weird.
Interesting question, if I might ask, because I'm kind of freshly catching up on these things. It almost sounds like what you're making an argument, the lack of stars in the pictures and stuff like that because of the aperture and having to crank it down.
Well, even
it sounds like you're justifying them not having stars a little bit. Am I
right? But you also wouldn't be able to see the lander or the flag or anything.
Just the brightness of the ground.
Right. Because if you even that out, I mean, I'm not 100% sure about the astronaut suits because they're white, so they would be reflecting hard. But they're definitely not as bright as the surface of the moon if we're to believe the story about it reflecting sunlight. But as far as the flag or literally anything else, you wouldn't be able to see anything. So it says here, the image and sound signals were transmitted.
I missed the beginning of that because you were muted. I missed the first half of that. So please
all I said was the image and sound signals were transmitted via a lightweight antenna on top of the lander. The umbrella-like antenna was lined with 38 miles of fine gold-plated wire, thinner than human hair, to reflect the signal 250,000 miles back to Earth. In the cabin, Buzz Aldrin closed a circuit breaker, and black and white TV pictures of Armstrong's ghostly form were beamed back to Earth. The images were grainy and indistinct, but they represented a stunning breakthrough in broadcasting. Now, if you look at the video here, does that look like 38 miles? I mean, maybe it is. It doesn't look like 38 miles to me, but even if it is, look at how tiny that transmitter is.
Yeah, let's see where.
It's in the video. If you just without clicking on the video, just right underneath the umbrella.
See, I was down looking at that TV.
It says restored Apollo 11 moonwalk. Testing the operating the lunar camera, testing the moon television antenna. Right under the picture of the antenna, there's a YouTube window. And it says restored Apollo 11 moonwalk.
Okay, there it is. Yes.
Don't click on the video, but just look at the you see the transmitter there.
Yeah, you mean the one that's just to the right of the astronaut?
So, yes.
Or no, it's just past. Isn't it that little white thing that's
so
it's just
both both of them, and not only are they not connected to each other, and then I believe there's another one on the lander itself. You see that antenna?
On the lander itself, yes, kind of up near the top.
Yeah. So we have 3 of these, and none of them are connected by wires.
Yeah, that would be some pretty advanced tech, I think. Even for NASA at that time.
And they're pointing the wrong way. So the Earth is in the other direction.
Trying to figure that out because based on the shadows.
Yes, supposedly the Earth is the other direction.
Okay. Yeah. Well, anyway, yeah. So it's pointing the wrong way as well,
But you see, also in regards to the camera, like whatever camera is filming this, you see how you can still make out the detail of all of the non-white components of the lander.
Yeah.
And the flag. If you adjusted the exposure for an incredibly bright surface, you wouldn't be able to see any of that.
Yeah. That would just be, if anything, it would be.
It would just not be there. Yeah.
Yeah, or just super bright.
Well, you wouldn't.
Blurry,
wouldn't see it at all, like the
just
stars.
Zero.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, these little diagrams seem like a better explanation than the actual video and photos we have. You see the sketches of lunar surface activity.
Yeah. Oh, right. Looks like.
Think about it the other way. Look at like SETI or something where it's not just one satellite. It's an entire gigantic dish array in order to get the signal out. And their signals are little. What's transmitted from SETI are just really, really, I mean, I can find the first transmissions of SETI. I believe it was just basic audio. And I think later they started TV transmissions, but look at the size of the SETI array.
Yeah, it's like
and this
global,
tiny little
right?
and this tiny little rinky dink.
Yeah. Well, it's good that he's sweeping it up, make sure that the moon floor is clean before you set it
sample
up there.
collection. Yeah. So after successfully landing on the moon, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were supposed to sleep for a few hours. They couldn't wait and requested to exit the lunar module ahead of schedule. This change of plans meant that the Honeysuckle Creek tracking station in Australia was in the perfect position to relay the first few minutes of transmission. Goldstone Observatory in California was also receiving the signal, but the picture was grainy and hard to make out. So wait a second. So they're sending the signal just wherever, and anybody can pick it up, and then they're also sending the 3 different color streams to mission control, if I'm understanding this correctly.
Well, I don't. Yeah, I'm definitely a little baffled, but because are they sending the 3 transmissions to Honeysuckle Creek?
So no. they're basically just sent from that tiny little umbrella. It looks like they're sending everywhere. And so Australia and California were the first to pick up the transmission.
Okay.
And then it
Okay, so they're
says here,
sending anyone could pick it up then.
well, supposedly the low res, this is the low res black and white. I'm assuming it doesn't say that though. So the highest quality was supposedly sent to mission control in 3 different transmissions.
Okay.
But I suppose anybody with the equipment might have been able to pick those up also. I don't know. So I wonder if they had a Wi-Fi password.
Yeah, no kidding.
So
Also, wait, I'm just Parkes radio telescope dish in Australia also began transmitting once it was able to have line of sight contact with Apollo 11.
Yeah. But even though it was pointing away from Earth. But anyway, so hold on a second. Let me finish reading this. The pictures were uploaded to Earth orbiting satellites, then transmitted back to NASA at Houston and via further satellite links to receiving centers around the world. Is it just me or is this a little complicated?
Yeah, well, but it's easier than faking it, of course. But yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. It is complicated, and also the satellite situation in 1969. I mean, the idea of it's like nothing even remotely like now, and so for Houston to have to send back to the satellites and then back to Earth around the whole globe, that seems borderline not possible at that time. But
there's three different stories here that they're peddling at the same time. That Australia and California picked up the transmission. Then NASA, wait a second. It says here, Goldstone Observatory in California was also receiving the signal, but the picture was grainy and hard to make out. At the last second, NASA switched from Goldstone to Honeysuckle for the world broadcast. So what does that mean? So NASA is getting their signal from Goldstone and Honeysuckle, and why is Australia? So does Australia have that great equipment that it's much better than the equipment in the US?
Yeah, I don't know. It seemed like it was trying to credit Honeysuckle Creek tracking station. I mean, it's saying up above that it was in the perfect position to relay. I mean, it sounds so cobbled together from just, but
also separate from all that, it's also transmitting to alleged satellites, and then from the satellites to NASA, and then other satellite links to TV centers. So there's 3 different transmissions?
Oh, you mean to the satellite and back?
Let me look at satellite television, because when did satellite television start? So satellite television launched in 1980. Oh, wait, that's the television channel. So the technology itself, let's see here.
Actually, I think I could throw something in here. I mean, I think that any of us who are a little bit older can recall, cable, that succession as Hollywood and media invaded our homes more and more. Cable TV was very exciting. That had no satellite aspect, though. I mean, unless I'm off topic, I mean, satellite TV didn't kick in until like 1990 or something like that. I mean, everything was still wire based, wasn't it?
The first public satellite television signals from Europe to North America were relayed via the Telstar satellite over the Atlantic Ocean on July 23rd, 1962.
Okay.
But that's still kind of weird. So between
that would have been a rare thing, though. I mean, it wasn't like
it said it was watched by 100 million people.
The thing in 1962 or the moon?
Yep, 1962.
But that wasn't something they were doing all the time, was it? I mean, using satellites for broadcasting.
Hold on. let's there were 650 million estimated watched the moon landing on TV. So 100 million watched the July 23rd public satellite television signals. Launched in 1962, the Relay 1 satellite was the first satellite to transmit television signals from the US to Japan. So are we to believe that the very first satellite transmissions occurred in 62 and 63, not even around the whole world, just from one continent to another, and a mere 7 years later, they can do it from the moon live?
Yeah.
So the first commercial communication satellite, the Intelsat 1, nicknamed Early Bird, was launched into geosynchronous orbit April 6th, 65. The first national network of television satellites, called Orbita, was created by the Soviet Union in October 67. So this was using the Molniya satellite for rebroadcasting and delivering television signals to ground downlink stations. Here's the other thing, too. If these signals are going through the satellite, then to the satellite uplink stations, then transmitted to everybody's television, how is there almost no delay?
Right. No, that's what I've been thinking with all this bouncing back and forth between Houston and then, this suddenly elaborate satellite system.
So the official television satellite industry started in 1976.
Okay.
So maybe they weren't broadcasting all the time, I guess. And then 1980 is when they actually started satellite channels.
Yeah, see, that sounds about right to me. I mean, that's why I'm just wondering. And again, I'm just flying by the seat of my pants. I mean, I don't really know all this stuff, but the 62, it just seems like that would have been an experimental broadcast. But Sputnik supposedly is like 1957 or something, right? I mean, the idea that we had sufficient satellites to broadcast, like to all, to 600 million people all around the globe, that just sounds a little suspicious to me. I mean, having like one or two satellites to do a targeted experiment, but
actually, okay. The fact that they have 3 different stories actually isn't as suspicious, because if this was real, if one of them failed, it would be nice to have a backup. So that actually isn't that crazy. So it gets even crazier. So supposedly images were also transmitted via microwaves to London. I never even saw anything about microwave transmit. So they basically, allegedly, did all these different types of transmissions. It was also an all-night British broadcast, and it was broadcast continually for 11 hours, July 19th to 20th, 1969. And this coverage wasn't the moon landing alone. It was including, at the Apollo 11 studio, they had special guests. There were even people reading poetry about the moon. It would be wild. Pink Floyd produced the song Moonhead just for this broadcast.
Oh, really?
This is insane, man. This is some kind of ritual, isn't it? I mean, this is wild.
Yeah, no, totally. Again, I feel like there's ample reasons to suspect the moon landings that are really solid. But I wanted to get to the microwave thing, because didn't you just say that they were broadcasting also via microwaves?
Yes, to London. So apparently,
that sounds. See, the use of microwaves was that and don't. First of all, was that advanced to such a point to be able to use that in that way for information broadcasting? But I also thought microwaves were more difficult. Like again, one of the funny things in the present is that it seems like we landed on the moon without even knowing how far the moon was exactly from the Earth.
Well,
But
the microwave transmission supposedly can be done wirelessly, but yeah, I don't know.
In '69,
Well, just the technology itself, yes. I don't
mean,
know. You would still need. The other issue is the interference with the other transmissions, because if they're if they're transmitting right microwave with all these other transmissions, that would supposedly cause interference.
yeah. Well, that's actually partly why I was even thinking of the microwave thing, because I just saw something elsewhere. It seems like issues of interference, or also that microwaves can be blocked more easily, I think, can't they? So uh, as an experimental broadcast from the moon in 1969, it doesn't. Perhaps I'm wrong, but at first blush, it seems
Okay,
like.
I found a better link actually. So this is the National Radio Astronomy Observatory. So this will be the last link we go over. So we
Wait,
try
and
to make heads or tails.
that's in New Mexico, is it not?
Is it?
The Very Large Array is in New Mexico, I think.
The
I've been to that.
NRAO?
Or is that there's one in South America too that they link up.
The headquarters of the website is in Virginia, but I'm not sure if that's where the actual.
Well, there's in New Mexico, sort of near Socorro, there's a Very Large Array, they call it, that is radio astronomy thing, and that they have a whole bunch of satellites. It's but anyway, that's neither here nor there. Let's get to this one.
Yeah, it might. Yeah, there's. Okay, so are you looking at the link? So how alive?
Oh, did you give it to me on Patreon?
Yeah.
Okay, no, I haven't gotten it yet.
How a live TV signal was sent from the moon to Earth. So it says here that there's 3 slow scans. Now, what's kind of unclear, are they sending it back up to the satellite and then retransmitting it again? It's a little weird here. It says here that the famous video of Apollo 11 began as a faint high-frequency transmission from the lunar lander. By the time the signal reached Earth, it was too weak to be detected by common radios and televisions. It took radio astronomers with sensitive antenna dishes to capture the signal. The Apollo mission was a tremendous feat of engineering. It was a bold plan never attempted before or since.
So in summation yeah, this seems like a good site as far as getting a sense for it. So it was so weak coming off of the moon that then these satellite array setups were able to magnify it, I guess.
Here's what I don't get though. If you scroll down, you can see the CSIRO's Parkes radio telescope. Look at the size of that. So why would it not take something way bigger than that to transmit from the moon?
That's what I'm saying too. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that we receive information from space. I mean, you need that kind of a satellite, not the little compact
that's not connected to anything with wires in the first place.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, this is really weird. This is weird. I mean, that's a big ask. And here we are in 2024, and they can't even get any kind of broadcast.
Right. Well, that's the thing too. Yeah, exactly. I mean, if we went there, I mean, obviously, all of the explanations for our not returning, and I'm sure you've seen more than me, where I just can't even believe it that you see NASA employees seriously describing like losing technology or something. I mean, like saying stuff like that. kind of like we forgot how to do it, or do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, various spokesmen, it's like, no way. I mean, you can't, like, if you went to the moon, like that just makes no sense. Would you agree with that? Or
Yeah,
I mean, with
right
some of
now
these
I'm
people,
looking, I'm also looking at the remote control shot of the moon that they got on what would it was this Apollo? It was a later mission where they panned the camera up. So
oh,
not
okay.
only so they had a remote, so they also had a remote control to control the camera remotely as they left the moon.
Oh, yeah, I think I heard something about that too. And I mean,
It
because
was the RCA GCTA motorized mount that filmed the lunar takeoff. It looks incredibly fake. I mean, all the footage. And that was, I believe that was the 72 mission, the last one. And
where they
they
left that.
remote controlled it.
Well, yeah, because that begs the question, doesn't it? I mean, remote control, in 1972, I mean, certainly on a civilian tech side, there wasn't much to speak of. So they left it in 1972, and then are we still supposed to be able to remote control that camera that we left there? Or?
I don't know. I'm getting kind of exhausted trying to make heads or tails of this. Like
I feel it.
none of this really makes any sense because you would think that they would have a 4K live stream of this latest moon landing.
Yeah, I mean, what was I saw like sort of a sad little thing where it like had crashed on its side or something.
There
I
was
just saw a couple. Yeah.
the only thing for the new one, they had no video at all, or even photos.
So that's totally inexcusable. I mean,
Yeah.
like, or how can they expect anyone to buy that?
They had some animations of what did they call it? Like whatever they call it, like a simulation, a video simulation of the landing. It wasn't the actual one. Like I'm watching it right now, and yeah, it's just a bunch of people celebrating.
Well, do you mind if I attempt to sort of it's a factoid around the moon, slightly crude humor? Uh, uh I'll take a stab at it. So when I first started to delve into this, the thing that got me going was that Dave McGowan. I've heard you mention him before.
Yeah.
Yeah, the because he's got the serial killer. I forget the name of
Yes.
that book, but then there's a website and it's like Wag the Moondog or something.
Program to Kill.
Oh yeah, that's the which
Yeah.
is excellent, I
Yeah.
think, well researched. But the he has a website that has his daughter's doing it since he died, but it's called Wag the Moondoggy or something, and he breaks down the stuff and it's quite funny actually. But there is currently a plan, I think, to try and retrieve like Alan Shepard or one of those guys. I guess took a crap on the moon, I think, and there is literally the intention of trying to retrieve that, or there's some place in California. You haven't heard this, have you?
No, I actually have not.
I wish I could remember it in more detail. So because it's hard to believe, but they've made some kind of thing about that like making that like we'll put a flag next to his crap or something. Just it's almost humiliating, or it's just so weird that they would even try and I mean that's serious that they're excited, not just one step on the moon, but there's also someone took a shit there too. So maybe this thing, if it can get over there and retrieve that and put the next shit back or something.
Right now I'm looking at the claims here. I'm on Northwestern University's website now on transmission delays for communications signals. They're claiming that it could be 1 second from the Earth to the moon, 8.3 minutes from the Earth to the sun, which is allegedly 93 million miles. Can you believe that?
Yeah, no. Although I have to tell you, I was just trying to find some validating evidence on that bathroom on the moon thing. So can you please repeat that? The
Oh,
92,000. Yeah.
Yeah, so the DS1 the DS1's communication system, this satellite, they're claiming, let's find out when the DS1 launched. I actually don't know. DS1 satellite launched 1998, October 24th, 98. But they're claiming that from this 98 satellite that wait a second. The signal has below a few the lag times over the distance. So they're claiming that the lag time would only be 1 second to the Earth to the moon, 8.3 minutes to the sun, 93 million miles away.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
It was, as far as I've heard that statistic or that factoid that's always presented, that if the sun's 93,000 miles or million miles away, you hear that all the time. Like if the sun were suddenly to be extinguished, that we would know for 8.5 minutes because of the because it would take, it's that many light minutes, I guess. So if they're broadcasting at the speed of light, I mean, according to all of their stuff, it would take 8.5 minutes, I think. Is that what you're saying?
I'm looking at radio signals. So I found a Reddit thread in amateur radio. They're talking about latency. So, for example, they brought up Stranger Things. Have you seen that?
I've seen the first. I think I've seen the first 2 seasons.
Yeah, you should watch all of them for Illuminati references. There's quite a bit, and it's all based on It's all based on MK Ultra anyway.
Right. No,
So there's a scene where one of the kids actually sets up a mini radio tower to communicate with someone in a different state. So it's 2,000 kilometers. So the latency they're saying it would be 50 milliseconds.
So wait, what would be 15 milliseconds?
50 milliseconds over 2,000 kilometers.
Well, I don't know. I mean, we'd have to calculate it, but I mean, I guess they're assuming it's traveling at speed of light.
I checked calculations on my video. I was just kind of wondering why. I mean, I guess, are they assuming, since there's no air in space, allegedly, if there is space, that it would...
I can't wait to hit some of these topics, too, because there's a lot. But
I mean, we got to wrap this up, so let's just do our final thoughts here. The transmissions are suspect, to say the least. Let's put it that way.
Very, very, I think that's a safe statement.
And I think the fact that they didn't even try this time around, when you would think they'd be able to do 4K high def, ultra high def resolution easily in the year 2024, and they didn't even try. I mean, it's kind of weird.
It almost indicates how strange this is getting. I mean, even to do it at all after all of these delayed missions and teasing about it for the last 20 years, we've been supposed to go back almost every year, right?
I went over that on have you seen my Matt Walsh breakdown?
Oh yeah, yes, definitely. By the way, kudos.
I went over, they were supposed to go back pretty much almost immediately. Not the rest of the 70s, although possibly 79, but throughout the 80s, and then they did the serious missions that they already got funded to the tune of billions of dollars all throughout the 90s. That's when they were actually supposed to set up the moon base by the end of the 90s.
Oh, it's just crazy. Yeah. So given the fact that there's been nothing but teasing and the devouring of millions and billions of taxpayer dollars, the idea that they couldn't set up a camera for this alleged, why
didn't they just put the same camera they had in '69 on it? Because they know that.
Yeah, exactly. Remote control that bad boy over and get some footage, and then you can sort of come full circle. Yeah, no, so it almost seems it's funny because I've been paying attention to other news, and then when I suddenly saw that, because I know Artemis had been delayed a few months ago, so it almost seemed like this came out of the blue, and it just seems more of that. Perhaps it's because of pressure on suspicion of the moon landing, but it's so obviously one of those hurried attempts to distract the public.
My question is, do people at Mission Control think it's real?
Well, so I have an interesting story about that I'm looking forward to. I talked with this one guy sort of infrequently, and the last time I spoke with him was before we've discussed many other topics, but I really hadn't dug into the moon yet, but he was suspicious. And his father apparently worked on, like, I think might have even been in Mission Control. And
wow.
Yeah, I want to talk to him again about it because he said his father never would really talk about it.
Would you you think you could get him on the podcast?
I have to. He was like sort of traveling around. In fact, he was a professor as well that like got chased out because of diversity and in fact that's where I first started to hear about some of this equity and things like that, where like that chased him out. He was teaching Colorado, I think, and so now
we're gonna have a pretty large stable of rogue professors on MindShock.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, because I'll see what I can do, but I have to. I'm not. He comes by from time to time at my. But to finish, what he told me though was that his father, he asked him once, like at the dinner table, because his father would never talk about it, never said anything about Armstrong or rah moon, and then so this guy asked his dad, did we go? And he said, well, you'd have to ask the astronauts that. Something to that effect. That was his response.
That is a weird response for sure.
Isn't it? I mean, that
wow. Wow.
So it's almost like he knew but then again, it's that thing getting back to this. Is it Sinclair Lewis with that quote? I mean,
Upton Sinclair.
Yes, Upton Sinclair. I mean, to have to work in a setting like that if you're suspicious, and yet you've got to have a paycheck, and
All right. Well, that is the final thought on the MindShock podcast regarding the alleged return to the moon and our examination of the history of space transmissions. So we'll catch you guys next time. You want to help support the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell for notifications. You can also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Like and share. Facebook, Reddit, Twitter, Patreon. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. This is Bruce McGuire signing off.